an underground place that doesn't allow anything to leave, a place where only S-rank adventurers may enter, is known as the Forbidden Labyrinth. Due to its long history of swallowing up multiple adventurers, it came to be spoken about with great respect. This place is called Abyss, where once you enter, you will never see the sky again. One day, an S-rank party called Future Plan is getting ready to go into a labyrinth. A man in the group tells someone to check the loading anchors. Then he hears some voices and asks another person what's going on. The person says that Godok, the leader of Future Plan, is having a disagreement with a new member. The man sees a swordsman named Jir walking towards them and putting his hand on Godok's shoulder. Jir asks if they can stop arguing. He explains that as a newcomer, he has kept quiet, but whether the girl is a baggage handler or not, it makes him uncomfortable to see Godok treating her this way. Jir requests Godok to cut it out. Godok angrily questions if Jir has a problem with how he does things. The baggage handler girl beside Jir tries to say something, but Jir stops her with his hand gesture. He tells Godok that he indeed has a problem with it. Jir adds that when he signed the contract with Godok, it didn't include agreeing with everything Godok does. Godok stands there, visibly angry, while Jir continues. He asks Godok if he's going to keep complaining about hindrances and useless burdens even in the labyrinth. Jir suggests that since they're about to challenge the hardest labyrinth in the whole country, Godok should let him enjoy it a little. Godok looks straight into Jir's eyes and without saying anything, turns away. Before walking off, he tells Jir not to push himself. Although Jir may be skilled with a sword, he's still a rookie, and he should follow orders in the labyrinth. Jir smiles and agrees to keep that in mind. Godok leaves, expressing frustration, telling Jir to stop slacking off and get a move on already. Jir looks back and sees the girl he supported, smiling with a ponytail. He asks if she is Kraha, the rookie support member from Future Plan. Kraha confirms with a smile and apologizes to Jir for him taking a stand for her. Jir tells her not to worry about it and suggests they go now. Kraha agrees and they both sit in the carriage. The carriage starts moving and Kraha mentions hearing that Jir is the heir to a famous sword school. Jir blushes, downplaying it, saying it's not a big deal. Kraha then brings up Godok, the team leader, informing her that Jir slayed a dragon in a country to the east. Jir smiles proudly, sharing that he accomplished that feat with his master. He lies back in the carriage, mentioning that he's currently touring around the country to defeat one by himself, acknowledging he still has a long way to go. Watching Jir, Kraha checks if he's okay. Jir confirms and praises her for not moving. Kraha, smiling, plays down the situation, saying anyone could handle that much, but Jir disagrees. Sadly, she sees herself as just a rookie support member and asks Jir if she can ask a question. Jir stays quiet, and suddenly she asks about how she can become stronger. Jir, surprised by the unexpected question, looks at her, and Kraha feels embarrassed, admitting it's crazy for someone like her to ask. Jir assures her it's fine, but wants to know the reason behind her question. Kraha, with tears in her eyes, reveals that she has always loved heroic tales since childhood and dreamed of traveling like the characters in those stories. Jir asks if she diligently studied things like packing and map making when she was old enough to become an adventurer, realizing why she's good at such things. Jir then asks if, as an adventurer now, she wants to improve her combat abilities. Kraha energetically agrees. Jir points out that being an adventurer requires more than just survival skills. She also needs the skills to take on monsters. Kraha is stunned and clenches her fist, expressing frustration that no one will teach her these combat skills. She explains that when she joined Future Plan, they promised advancement training to move from a support role to a main one. However, the training turned out to be vague instructions like learn by observation and give up if you can't do it. Jir wonders if there is no internal system for training people. Kraha confirms, and Jir realizes that's why they're bringing in outsiders like him to strengthen their team. Kraha laughs, acknowledging her inexperience, but Jir finds this method unreasonable and something he can't agree with. Kraha, feeling a bit embarrassed, admits it's pretty shameless to ask Jir all these questions. In response, Jir points his finger and hypothetically presents a scenario where a dog monster or something similar is coming at Kraha. He asks her what she would do in such a situation. Kraha says she would try to encounter it, and Jir advises her that it would be better to anticipate its attack in advance and set a trap. This suggestion shocks Kraha, and Jir explains that such strategies are kind of cunning but effective. He emphasizes that there are no strict rules in battle, and everyone holds different cards in their hands, determining when and how to use them. Kraha listens carefully as Jir explains. Using his finger, Jir emphasizes that the most important thing is to understand the card she holds and choose the best move possible. He assures Kraha that no matter how useless she thinks her hand is, there will always be a scenario where it can be useful. The more cards she has, the stronger she becomes. Jir adds that a versatile card will have a big impact, and if she strengthens it, she can use it in different situations. Summing up, he says that training, experience, and knowledge will increase her overall strength. Kraha looks at Jir with a serious expression, while Jir smiles, sharing this advice. Kraha asks Jir if he is a theoretician, and Jir tells her he's just a challenger. He admits he might talk a big game, but at the end of the day, he's just a swordsman. Jir explains that he's not good with anything else, and Kraha can say he has chosen one card in his hand that he brute forces everything with, because all he does is watch people and turn his envious feelings into logic. He further informs Kraha that his eyesight is really poor, and when he slayed the dragon, it placed a curse on his eyes. Now, only physical enhancements like increased hardness have any effect on him. Kraha gets really scared when Jir admits he has a bigger problem than the previous curse. His sense of direction is so bad that if he's alone in the labyrinth, he might never find his way out. Plus, if he loses his glasses, it could be really dangerous for him. So to be safe, he gives his spare glasses to Kraha to hold on to. The carriage suddenly stops and they've reached their destination. Just before going into the labyrinth, Jir offers to teach Kraha a simple card for fighting. He can't be her official teacher or show her any fancy sword techniques, but he can teach her the basics of sword fighting if she's interested. Kraha quickly grabs his hand and bows deeply. Although it's just a small promise, it means a lot to her. Little did they know what was about to come. A mere 2 hours into the labyrinth, Jir finds himself alone, his glasses shattered and the darkness closing in. The journey has turned into a dangerous and surprising situation, and now the group, who were confident before, doesn't know what will happen next in the deep abyss. Jir is thinking about how something really unexpected happened during the labyrinth raid. Everything was going well until that tense moment when they encountered a monster. He realizes that even the strongest S-rank adventurers never made it past the 3rd level of this super tough labyrinth. In his mind, he thanks the team for planning a good route that made it easy to move around, even when they couldn't avoid meeting enemies. Jir and his party now face a real danger as they encounter the boss on the 3rd floor. These special monsters are on every floor, and they get a lot of magic power from the labyrinth itself. Unlike other monsters, they don't wander around. Instead, they wait for adventurers in a room called the boss chamber. The boss chamber can be avoided and skipped, but not on the 3rd floor, as their party planned. Jir, being the first, charges in, holding his sword tightly. After Jir's charge, it's time for them to follow their original plan. Now in a one-striker formation where the vanguard draws all the attention from the enemy. Jir is satisfied with this plan because all he can do is swing his sword, and it's natural for him to take the brunt of the enemy's attacks. It's easier for him than worrying about others, and it's good physical training too. Jir looks back to see what's happening, as there's no logistical support, and there's Godak, the leader. The demon swords, closely linked with the man himself, disappear after using an excess of mana. Godak, realizing the floor boss is extremely strong, steps forward and unleashes his demon sword. Jir looks at Godak, and Godak looks back, silently ordering him. Jir nods, indicating that he will buy some time. Jir jumps in the air to attack the floor boss, and at the same time, Godak uses his power, Demon Sword Release. Unfortunately, Jir is within the range of this power, and he's shocked to realize that Godak didn't wait for him to finish his strike. Everything goes completely dark for a moment due to the flash of Godak's power. Jir has no time to avoid it, and a massive blast occurs, creating a hole in the labyrinth. Jir finds himself falling into that hole, thinking that only the boss floor was his friend and no one else, as he sees that he's not alone in the fall. Finally, he gets to see the real face of his party leader. The floor boss, whom Jir briefly considered a friend, tries to attack him while they are both in the air. However, Jir, showing his strong courage, fights back with his sword and manages to defeat the floor boss. Afterward, he falls to the ground and lies there, taking deep breaths, trying to understand what just happened. He realizes the floor boss was tough too, but then he sits up and looks at the hole from which he fell. Climbing back up seems impossible. Covered in sweat and feeling anger inside him, he decides he will never forgive Godak, no matter the reason behind it. He wonders what was going on in Godak's mind to use such a dangerous technique on someone. He thinks about the argument they had before and wonders if that's why it happened. Jir shouts loudly, expressing that he was nearly attacked from behind, and when he gets out of there, he won't be satisfied until he defeats Godak. After yelling and letting out his frustration, Jir wonders how he'll escape. He remembers there are others in his party who are his friends, like Kraha. He thinks there are more girls like her who could help. He imagines if they could toss down a rope for him to hold on to, then he could come out of the hole and punch Godak hard in the face. But first, he needs to get out of there, so he starts shouting for help. The scary ceiling terrifies him, but then he smiles, realizing he still has his glasses. Happily, he takes them off and shouts that his glasses are fine, which is crucial because without them, he wouldn't be able to go on. As long as he has them, he believes he'll be fine. Kraha sits on the ground, trying to make sense of what she just saw. She can't believe her eyes. She remembers the moments when she first met Jir. Then, she hears Godak's voice, saying it was an unfortunate accident. He adds that if the 3rd floor boss can withstand an unleashed demon sword, it's too much for them, so they're withdrawing. Kraha's eyes widen as she wonders if they're leaving Jir behind like that. Anger builds in her as she shouts at Godak, accusing him of intentionally aiming at Jir. She points out that someone as skilled as him wouldn't make such a mistake. Kraha tells Godak that he did it on purpose. Godak gets angry and lifts Kraha by her neck. He menacingly asks her what she's going to do about it. Kraha responds that she will report Godak to the guild for attacking a fellow member from behind. breaking the rules. She adds that Godok is also responsible for injuries caused in the labyrinth due to negligence and emergency evacuation. Kraha tells Godok that no matter how he tries to walk away from it, there were many witnesses to what happened. Godok stares into Kraha's eyes and demands to know where these supposed witnesses are. Kraha looks around, but everyone seems drained and silent. Godok smirks, telling Kraha that nobody saw anything. Kraha is shocked by everyone's silence. Godok dismisses Kraha's accusations, calling her useless and claiming she imagined the whole thing. He turns away preparing to leave, and tells Kraha to dream all she wants, but not to bother him. Then he orders everyone to get ready to leave. Kraha sits there in silence, shocked to learn that she can't do anything. She remembers trying to help Jir by reaching out her hand, but it couldn't reach him. Suddenly, another adventurer named Holland comes to Kraha and encourages her to snap out of it. He tells her that if she leaves, she'll be in big trouble, and Kraha, still in shock, asks Holland why everyone agrees with Godok. Holland explains that for them, Godok is everything, and there's only one top-tier party in this country. If they go against Godok, they won't be able to stay here. Kraha wonders if that's the only reason everyone supports Godok, despite his wrong actions. Holland agrees and shares that he has a family to support too. Kraha clenches her fist in pain. A tear drops from her eye, and she says she can't just leave things like this. She's determined to go, even if she has to go alone. However, Holland advises her that she can't do anything right now. Kraha lowers her head in sorrow, asking Holland if he's saying it's pointless even if she goes to rescue Jir on her own. Holland blows a cigarette, agreeing with her and saying she can't do it right now. He explains that he's not telling her to ignore the situation, but she's not strong enough at the moment. He assures her it's a normal part of being an adventurer, and this time she happened to witness it. He tells her there's nothing she can do right now, and she clenches her fist in frustration, saying she didn't become an adventurer to feel this way. Holland tries to console her by putting his hand on hers, but Kraha starts crying. He tells her the only thing she can do is learn from someone like himself, a less than ideal professional adventurer. Kraha decides to stick with Holland, not resigning from the party. She didn't want to be in this kind of situation, but she knows that leaving would mean no future for her, and she'd never be able to explore the abyss on her own again. 3 months later, one day, Kraha runs heavily, coming to a stop in front of the labyrinth. She thinks to herself while gazing at it that one day, when she descends into the labyrinth once more and reaches the deepest level, she will bring Jir back to the surface, even if it's just a small fragment of him. Running to the abyss has become a part of her daily routine, and as she walks, wiping her sweat, she notices a large carriage, wondering if there's a nobleman inside. Looking at some holy knights, she wonders about the unit under the direct order of the church being present, as they typically only take action when it's time to seal a fallen king. She gazes at them with curiosity, pondering if something has happened. Among the holy knights, she sees a girl with a staff in her hand. Some claim her as a saint, but the girl doesn't like that title because she thinks it doesn't suit her. Kraha gazes at Saint, thinking some not so nice thoughts about how useless she is, and even worse, what people are saying about her friend Jir. Rumors are floating around that Jir is already gone, but deep in her mind, Kraha is determined to bring back her friend, no matter how much she has to transform herself. She's ready to go a long way, even if she can't do anything at the moment. She starts walking towards Saint, telling herself in her mind that she can't bear to stay the way she is now. One day, she believes she will become powerful enough to bring back her friend. Meanwhile, Jir spots some wolves carrying fish in their mouths, heading his way. Fear shows on his face as he prepares himself, swiftly snapping at the wolves with his sword until he manages to defeat all three. Taking deep breaths in front of the wolf corpses, he warns them not to underestimate him. Jir declares that although he may look like a human, he's become a caveman, and these little dogs can't handle a turf war with him. Standing there, he reflects on the 3 months since the disaster. Eating the uncooked fish, he finds it gross, realizing he's nearing his mental limit and the taste of fish is awful. Jir calculates that being here for 3 months means he's been enduring this for nearly 100 days. He believes he deserves a little praise for holding on this long without proper survival tools. While eating his fish, he suddenly spots a shiny crystal inside it. This makes him super excited because he thinks he can sell it for a lot of money. He talks to a stone with a picture of Godok on it, sharing how he found the crystal. But then, out of nowhere, he throws the crystal away, saying he doesn't care what anyone thinks. This makes him feel a roller coaster of emotions, going from happy to sad. He thinks about how people in civilized society have their limits. Feeling down, he wonders if he's going crazy and questions what he's complaining about. Trying to cheer himself up, he pushes himself off the ground and decides that if he keeps moving upwards, he'll eventually reach the surface. He says goodbye to the stone with Godok's picture, telling it they'll meet again on the surface. He declares that he's setting out and starts moving upward. After walking for a while, he remembers a book he read that talked about 2 kinds of people with a bad sense of direction. The first type are those who ignore any doubts and just keep going in the wrong direction because they're not careful. The second type are those who doubt themselves a lot, even when they're going the right way. They keep changing paths and end up hopelessly lost. He realizes he's probably the second type because during his training, he kept asking questions and doubting himself, which got him harsh answers from his master. Despite feeling unsure, he decides to be confident and tells himself he's the second type. He knows if he lets his doubts control him, he'll get even more lost. So he keeps reassuring himself that he's not lost and continues walking on the upward path. As he continues walking, he glances at the path and starts to doubt whether he was going uphill just a moment ago, or if it's just in his imagination. Confused, he stops and decides to deal with the question of the wrong path later after moving a bit more. Unexpectedly, he steps on a button on the ground. Lacking self-awareness, he realizes that he falls into the first category, the type of person who doesn't show caution, acts without thinking, and easily gets caught in traps. In this moment, he acknowledges that he might be considered an idiot as he unwittingly triggers the button without any hint of caution. After stepping on the button, Jiro immediately falls into the trap. Shocked, he tries to pull himself above, marveling at the trap's cleverness. Suddenly, as he descends, he senses something in front of him. In his wet state from the water in the ditch, he sees a girl holding a staff. He gazes at her in astonishment, questioning in his mind whether she is a person. The girl, noticing Jiro's wet and shocked state, smiles and assures him in a friendly tone that she is indeed a person. Jiro's expressions shift as his brain struggles to process the sight of another person after so many days. The girl, curious, asks if she appears different in some way. Apologizing, Jiro explains that he lost his glasses, affecting his vision, so he can't see properly. The girl playfully points her fingers at him and asks how many, to which Jiro immediately responds with 38. He wonders about the presence of a person rather than a monster in the trap, finding it hard to believe that a human would wait in the end of a large-scale trap like this. All of a sudden, a big monster shows up behind the girl. Jiro sees it and grabs his sword tightly, getting ready to fight. The girl, still smiling, says again that she's a monster. She doesn't know about the monster behind her, but Jiro is ready. Quickly, he uses his sword skills. First, the secret sword arts, then another one called Moondream, and cuts the monster into 2 pieces. After defeating the monster, Jiro is really excited. He touches the girl's hands to make sure she's a person. Happy to find out she is, Jiro looks at her with a big smile and clear excitement on his face can be seen, and the girl also smiles back. The girl sits on the floor and touches the ground with her fingers, feeling it like a groove. She informs Jiro about it, who wonders what she means by groove. The girl suggests he touches the ground to feel it himself. She speculates that it's likely a magic circle and asks Jiro for his opinion. Jiro, admitting he's just a swordsman, expresses uncertainty. The girl ponders the situation, while Jiro, standing nearby, reflects on how he ended up here. After a brief silence, Jiro asks the girl if she's here to conquer the labyrinth. She confirms, mentioning that the church brought her here. Jiro wonders if she's now wandering these steps alone. The girl agrees, and Jiro, looking at her with empathy, realizes she's been betrayed too. He shares his own experience of being betrayed by his team leader while fighting a floor boss. The girl explains that's not what happened. Jiro, confused, asks her to clarify, and the girl thinks she triggered a teleportation trap, something she had read about in adventurer novels. Jiro asks if she's feeling disheartened, and the girl replies that it's not the case. The Holy Knights who accompanied her did a good job. They escorted her to the 4th floor, a place no one had reached before. However, she started feeling sluggish, and it seems she was the only one caught in the trap. Jiro, shocked, wonders if she's not an adventurer. The girl confirms this and asks if it's okay to share. After a moment, she tells Jiro that she and the Holy Knights came to investigate the labyrinth. Jiro, still confused, asks if she means the labyrinth itself. The girl confirms, explaining that the church leader sensed something ominous here about 3 months ago. Unfortunately, she didn't notice at that time because she was lying in bed with a stomachache from eating too much for lunch. Jiro asks if he can request something. The girl smiles and asks, what is it? Jiro tells her that since she is from the church, she must be able to use sanitation magic. He asks her to fix him up since he looks like a stray dog on a rainy day. The girl smiles and tells Jiro that she didn't want to say it first, but he surely stinks like the sludge from a drainage ditch. Jiro feels a bit bad and asks if it is not a bit of an exaggeration. But the girl roasts Jiro really bad by telling him that he really exactly smells like that. She tells him not to worry and uses her magic on him, and within a few seconds, a flash appears on Jiro. Jiro feels the particles of dirt flying away from him, thinking that if he had met her just 3 days later, he would have probably reverted to a completely feral state and attacked her without hesitation. However, after a few seconds, Jiro looks fresh as if he has just taken a shower. He thanks the girl for saving him and informs her that he feels like a brand new person now. The girl's face looks a bit confused, and Jiro asks what's the matter. The girl asks Jiro if his eyes are cursed, and Jiro asks how she could tell. The girl asks if she is prying too much. Jiro feels a bit embarrassed, saying he is not trying to hide something, and he has an idea on how to break the curse, so she does not need to fuss over it. The girl smiles, and Jiro again appreciates her, saying he has been impressed by her sanitation magic and her recognition of curses. The girl blushes at Jiro's compliments and tells him that he is also pretty impressive himself. Jiro stands in confusion. wondering why she is complimenting him, and the girl tells him that this kind of crab monster is quite strong, and Jir defeated it in a single strike, so he is probably even stronger than the Holy Knights. Jir, with a smirk, ready to unleash his sword, says this is the only thing he can rely on. He looks at the two monsters behind the girl and immediately uses his sword to charge at them, killing them with one strike. Jir smiles and says they can't settle down for a chat here, so he asks her to change location. He asks her if she is okay to come with him, because he knows a safe place. The girl agrees and they both start walking with big smiles on their faces. Jir tells her his camp is not even 5 minutes from here, but he got swept away by the water, though he knows where it is. Since there were many paths from there, Jir again got lost and went in the wrong direction, which took them 5 hours to arrive at the camp. After walking for 5 hours straight, they both look tired, and Jir apologizes to her for this, asking her to sit on the stones. They both sit beside each other, and the girl says, "Let me formally introduce myself." Jir looks at her, and the girl, with a smile, introduces herself as Lily Leia of the church. In response, Jir also introduces himself as Jir, and Lily Leia, while laughing, tells him that he can freely call her Lily or Leia, or even Big Sis. Jir wonders why Big Sis, and Lily tells him that despite how she looks, she is actually over 20. Jir, who is 19 years old, starts wondering how she looks so young, and if she is really that old. Many questions about her hierarchy, class, and society rise in his brain. Jir asks if he should speak more formally with her, and Lily tells him there's no need for that, because she actually likes this more since the people around her are always so stuffy. Jir apologizes again, and Lily tells him it's fine, expressing her desire to be more frank as well. Jir feels relief and says he would like to talk about his situation. Lily tells him there's no need since she has already heard it. Jir looks at her with a confused face, and Lily informs him that before she entered the labyrinth, a cute short gray-haired girl asked her to take care of Jir. Jir wonders if she was Kraha, thinking he thought he was abandoned, but realizing Kraha still has not forgotten about him. He thinks that if it had been him, he would have assumed that someone was dead, especially if they didn't return after 3 whole months, particularly in the hardest labyrinth. Tears fall from his eyes as he realizes Kraha is still certain that Jir would be alive, but Lily informs him that Kraha asked her to bring back even if it's just a bone from him. Jir understands that now it makes sense since he's been stuck here for so long. He feels good after realizing that at least one of his friends is worrying about him. Lily asks Jir how he is this deep in and why he is at this place all alone. Jir explains he was knocked down to the very bottom at first, leaving Lily in shock. He says he doesn't know if it was intentional or not, but he ended up being attacked from both sides by the floor boss and a guy from the same party as him. Since then, he has been wandering around, trying to find a way up, but he never managed to find the original floor. As days passed, he started to revert back to a caveman. While mumbling to himself and walking undeterred, he was swept away by water, and suddenly Lily was right before his eyes. With a smile, he thanks Lily for saving him from the curse of the caveman. Lily tells Jir that he is pretty slender for a caveman, and Jir responds, saying it is hard to bulk up when constantly traveling, and he can't build up a large stable stock of food. Lily agrees, saying the guy from Jir's party was such a meanie, and they will protest against him when they get out of here. She tells Jir that she will also go with him. Jir thanks her and wonders if this is really the attitude of a big sister. Jir, then returning to the topic, says even though he starts out on a lower floor, he should be making a fair amount of progress in getting back to the surface over the last 3 months. So, they should be able to make it out of here eventually. Lily, with a smile, asks if that means they just need to keep climbing upwards, and Jir, with a serious face, confirms it. Jir asks Lily if she is aware that there are floor bosses here, and Lily tells him she knows about them. Jir explains he knows the path to the next floor, but there's a big monster he can't beat right now. Jir explains that he has already found the path leading to the next floor, but a monster is blocking it. He mentions that the monster isn't necessarily stronger than him, but it's incredibly tough, and he can't see any weak points to exploit with his sword. Sadly looking at his sword, he informs Lily that if he tried to stab through the monster with his force, his sword would break. Lily asks if having his glasses would make a difference, and Jir responds that he doesn't want to make excuses. The truth is, he admits, he's just inexperienced, and with more skill, he could force his way through. That's why he has been training there for a little while. He adds that it's convenient with the watering hole, so he doesn't have to struggle to find something to drink. Lily asks him in confusion, "What do you mean by watering hole?" and calls Jir blind like a bat. Jir wonders why she's saying this to him. Lily dips her hand in the fluid and asks Jir if he really thought it is water. Jir's facial expressions disappear, and he tells Lily to cut it out because it looks creepy. Lily looks at Jir with a smile and tells him she will clean the inside of Jir's stomach later. And for now, let's go to the chamber. Jir tells her his stomach is hurting right now, and he can't kill that monster. Lily winks at Jir and says Big Sis is pretty amazing herself, so she will help him win with ease. She makes a funny pose, telling Jir that she will make him a real caveman. Jir wonders if she will do this with the enhancement spell. Lily smiles and confirms it. Jir calls it useless, saying he is saving his strength by now. And the real problem is his sword, because it won't be able to withstand his strength. Lily asks if it is cheap, and Jir informs it is so blunt. Lily points out that Jir claimed to be a humble swordsman who knew nothing about magic, and she thought he was stronger than the Holy Knight. Jir disagrees, saying he never claimed to be stronger than her Holy Knights, and asks her not to make nice changes to his words. He explains that no matter what kind of sword you use, slamming it with a lot of force can make it shatter. That's why he likes having a spare sword ready, and he bought this one just in case his old one broke. He adds that it wouldn't be a problem if he could find the right place to strike. But before he can finish, Lily cuts in and asks if it's because he doesn't have his glasses. With sad eyes and frustration, Jir agrees. Lily, with a smile, asks Jir how many times it would take to beat the floor boss. Jir, sitting on a stone, answers 1 time. He looks into Lily's eyes and explains that if he can swing with his full strength just once, he could kill it. Lily moves closer, telling him he's very confident. Jir blushes a little, saying he's learned from past experiences, so it's the plain truth. However, he adds that if he does that, he won't have a weapon anymore, making things tougher. Lily sits down in front of Jir, who is holding his sword with a sorrowful look. Lily shows her shining finger to Jir, who looks confused. Lily touches her glowing finger to Jir's sword and says she'll give him a second swing as a bonus. Jir, still confused, looks at his sword. Lily tells him that the magic sword is now incredibly strong and will never break. Jir looks completely shocked. Lily giggles and asks Jir why he's so surprised with her holy magic. Jir stands up, holding his sword, wondering if holy magic is something mentioned in the Church of Rasti's writings. Lily laughs and says it seems like a book for kids to read aloud. That's where she remembers it from, at least. Jir lifts up his sword and looks at its glowing blade with a serious face, wondering what it is. Lily tells him it's not the strongest holy sword, but more like a fake one. Jir expresses his gratitude to her. Lily laughs loudly and wonders if Jir is a knight from 300 years ago. Lily, with a smile, tells Jir that she will hold him to his earlier promise. Lily asks Jir how far the boss is. Jir estimates about 10 minutes of walking. Lily says she supposes it will take around 30 minutes. Jir gets upset that she doubts him, and Lily giggles in response. However, they begin to walk, and after 3 hours, they finally reach the gate. Both of them stand in front of the door, tired, and sweat is dripping from their faces. Lily teases Jir, saying that when someone claims to have been somewhere many times, they should find it a bit easier to get there. Jir, exhausted, admits he can never remember a single landmark and apologizes to Lily. Lily, with a sad and tired expression, asks if they should go now. Jir opens the door and they both see the huge one-eyed monster in front of them. The monster howls, and Jir pulls out his sword, saying it's still a bit too clumsy to call it a direct attack. Lily watches him, wondering what he's up to. Suddenly, Jir looks right into the monster's eyes and charges at it. Lily is shocked by the scary howl, but Jir, not scared at all, uses his skill Thunderbolt and manages to slice the monster's mouth into many pieces. Lily watches Jir fighting nervously, while Jir, after defeating the floor boss, thinks in his mind that he may need more practice. After Jir defeats the monster, he puts his sword away and stretches his neck. Lily, smiling, asks if he's okay and wonders if the coating on the sword was weaker than expected. Jir smiles back and says it's alright. He's just surprised because it's the first time he used that move without breaking his sword. Lily laughs and teases him about talking big but not delivering. Jir looks at her, realizing she's not ordinary. The spell she used should be too advanced for a regular church member. He wonders if she's as strong as higher-ranking church officials. Lily notices Jir deep in thought and tries to snap him out of it. Jir, lost in contemplation, wonders if a skill like Lily's is hard for someone as young as her. He remembers Lily saying she's 20, thinking she might be a seasoned woman named Lilia with a cute, youthful voice. Lily sits there, wondering why Jir keeps staring at her without saying anything, while Jir, lost in his thoughts, stares at Lily and wonders if he is an idiot. Jir starts looking at the roof, and Lily asks him if he is crying, but Jir tells her he is just feeling a bit shocked. No doubt, the last 3 months in the cave alone have transformed Jir truly into an idiot. Lily goes to the dead body of the monster, and Jir looks at her in confusion, asking if she is wondering about what kind of monster it was. Jir, with a disappointed face, tells her that all he can see is a blurry silhouette. So, even now, he still hasn't figured it out. While looking at the monster, Lily thinks about many different animals, and Jir wonders what she is thinking. Meanwhile, Lily even contemplates the planets and the solar system, finally saying it might be a horse-type monster because it has 4 legs. Jir also thinks that makes sense. Lily suddenly notices something and says, "That's not all." Jir wonders what she is talking about. Lily stands up and asks Jir if they should keep going as she points her finger towards the door. Jir asks before that if he can tell her something. Lily, with confusion, looks at Jir. Jir, with an embarrassed smile, tells her he has an awful sense of direction. He sadly mentions that he has searched this floor thoroughly, so he thinks the door ahead of them should lead to the upper floors. However, he admits he is not really confident about it. If she thinks they are going the wrong way, he asks her to let him know. Lily walks towards him and holds his hand, leaving Jir in a state of shock. Lily, with a smile, tells Jir that it is all fine because from now on, they will choose the path together. Lily tells Jir happily that he can count on her because she loves looking at atlases. Jir looks at her in confusion, wondering what atlases are. Lily's face lights up as she tells him not to worry, assuring him that everything will be fine. She starts telling Jir that she rarely leaves her home, like once or twice a year. She mentions that she doesn't really enjoy traveling as well. Jir looks at her, wondering what she is talking about, while Lily just keeps on speaking. She explains that she is a true homebody who really loves being at home, but still enjoys reading travel journals, guidebooks, and whatnot. However, after telling Jir about herself, she smiles and tells Jir that he can rest easily in the boat that is her hands. Jir's expressions changes from sorrow to happiness, and he says, "Then it sounds like I'm in good hands." Lily laughs and assures Jir not to worry. Whereas Jir has some trust issues as well, because once upon a time, he was tricked by his master into boarding a luxury passenger ship, where he was forced to fight desperately against a stupid amount of giant squid monsters. Meanwhile, Lily asks Jir what he thinks about where they should go. Jir responds that his sixth sense is telling him to go to the left. Lily says she was also thinking the same thing. However, there is only one way to go. Lily remarks that it seems Jir and she think alike. Yet, when Jir starts to feel worried, there is only one way for him to feel at ease, and that is to keep going forward. In this way, the duo of Lily with double energy and Jir with double strength descended 50 floors in a month's time. They laughed and spent quality time with each other, becoming really good friends in the meantime. With this, the adventure of them continued. Jir lifts up the boat towards the upward surface, with Lily sitting and looking at the roof. Lily mentions they haven't made it to the surface yet. Jir starts breathing heavily and Lily asks if he is okay and if she is heavy. Jir tells her that it's fine, and this is just another type of training for him. Lily, after listening to his answer, confirms if he is saying she is heavy. Jir doesn't give her any answer, making Lily feel a bit embarrassed. Suddenly, Jir looks at Lily with a smile and says it's not even enough for training. He can actually feel his whole body losing muscle as they speak. Lily's face glows as she speaks, saying she thought so. Lily says she thinks they have climbed quite a lot, and this labyrinth is really deep. Jir, without saying anything, just keeps breathing heavily. Lily becomes frustrated and says she wonders how all the Holy Knights are doing. She hopes they are not mad that she disappeared. She looks at the roof and says maybe that's a little too selfish to ask. She wonders how she will apologize to them when she gets back, assuming that everyone is going to be mad at her. Meanwhile, Jir, after resting for some time, grabs the boat again and starts walking. He says he has been thinking it might be just his imagination, but he thinks it's about time he mentioned it. Lily wonders what he is talking about, and Jir, after taking long breaths, asks with frustration if they are lost. Lily looks at Jir's face covered with sweat and remains silent. Jir, with frustration, starts speaking. He knows he fell a fairly great distance when knocked down from the 3rd floor, but he doesn't think it was this far. He insists there is no way he fell so far that he would not be able to reach the surface even after climbing upwards continuously for 4 months. Lily tells Jir that it is impossible, but Jir stops her with his hand and says it is tough to recognize their own mistakes, and he is painfully aware of that fact. He asks Lily if she does not think it's the time they should accept their mistake. His frustration increases as he says perhaps they're idiots plowing ahead at breakneck speeds on the completely wrong path. Lily looks at Jir with a serious face and asks if he knows there are 2 types of people with a poor sense of direction. Jir goes silent and listens to her. Lily smiles and points her finger towards Jir, saying the first type are those who continue down a genuinely wrong path, but that's not them. Jir asks her the reason why they are not in that category. Jir states that the whole time they have been traveling, they've selected their paths together based on intuition. Lily then asks Jir how many times they have been divided in their opinions. Jir's eyes widen as he replies not even once. Lily smirks, telling him that there's no way 2 people could consistently choose the wrong path, and the chances of both having a poor sense of direction would be so astronomically low that it would be practically impossible. In shock, Jir asks her if she really thinks like that, starting to doubt that they have already trampled all over. However, Lily continues her sentence, saying the second type of person with a poor sense of direction is someone who is initially going the right way but becomes overwhelmed with anxiety and intentionally veers off into the wrong path. Hearing this, Jir remains in complete shock, looking at Lily while hiding his face with his hand. He asks her if she thinks that this is what he is doing right now. Lily walks past him and confirms that he is right. She tells Jir that most things will turn out okay in the end if he just sticks it out. Jir asks her what if they stick it out and nothing comes of it. Lily smiles and opens her arms, saying in that case, they will know there's nothing there and return to their original path. Jir looks at her in shock, and Lily notices a big monster behind Jir, her smile immediately disappearing. Jir notices her expressions as he senses something behind him. Immediately, he unleashes his sword and charges at the monster, killing it in one strike. He mentions that her answer not only raises 1 good point, but 25 good points. With that, he agrees and thinks it would be useless to return now after passing more than 120 floors. Lily, with a smile, asks him if he is feeling a bit better. Jir confirms as he bows his head, saying this has been very educational and referring to Lily Leia as an instructor. Lily looks at him with confusion but plays along, smiling suddenly, saying, "Keep on learning, Jir, my boy." Jir blushes as they both look at the path. Lily tells him they have hit a fork in the road. They both point in the right direction together. Looking at each other with a smile, they both answer at the same time, choosing the same direction. With that, they both started going in the right direction, casting away their doubts, and continued onward. Little do they know, the path they selected will take them through a ravine untouched by light, leading them even deeper down. In this way, they both stop and start eating food. Lily eats uncooked fish, and Jir drinks water. Lily, with a disgusted expression, comments that it tastes so bad, and she wants to cry. On the other hand, Jir, after drinking water, exclaims that it is so good. He mentions that it's enough for him, while Lily looks at him and continues eating the fish, expressing how bad it is. But because neither of them could start a fire, they had to eat the uncooked fish. And for water, thanks to Lily and her sanitation magic, she cleaned the water with her skill. After the meal, she uses her magic to clean both of their hands. Jir looks at her with a smile and thanks Lily for helping him. Lily yawns and says now it's time for her to take a nap. She asks Jir if he is going to keep training. Jir confirms it and thinks in his brain that without Lily's help, he would not have been able to defeat that horse floor boss. He says to himself that it is getting tougher and tougher to beat the floor bosses in this area on his own power, and he still has a long way to go. Lily hears him and looks at him with angry expressions. She says to him that she knew Jir still can't accept it. Jir looks at her, wondering if she really listened to everything he said, and tries to explain himself. Lily sits with a sad face, expressing that perhaps she did something uncalled for. She further says how disappointing it is to be thought of as a nuisance. Jir tries to explain to her, saying he was not trying to imply that he does not need help. However, Lily, without hearing him, mentions how she went out of her way to learn magic to assist people. She holds the liquid fluid from the ground and, with a smile, asks Jir about how he tries to drink the swamp water. Upon seeing this, Jir apologizes to her as he realizes she genuinely helped them clean the water, which he drank and liked so much. But he asserts that he is asking for help and wants to work hard to ensure he won't be embarrassed to accept that help. Lily, still smiling, asks him if he wants this water, and Jir says it's just a habit or a kind of self-satisfaction for him. He then asks Lily how about they get back to what started this discussion. He starts explaining to her that he understands people can only carry on because they receive support from others. For example, someone made him glasses, and he can't make clean water. He further explains that swordsmen tend to always think about themselves. However, Lily just smiles and says she is kidding. Jir's face remains in shock, wondering if she was joking the entire time. Lily confirms it, laughing, and asks Jir if he has ever been called cute before. Jir confirms he hasn't ever been called cute, and even his master said he is not cute and way too impertinent. Lily agrees, saying she can also see that, which kinda makes Jir feel bad. Lily laughs and says sometimes Jir starts to talk more formally, and it would be better if he were more direct. She laughs, saying she thinks it is cute when he is trying to force himself not to use formal language. Her face glows as she keeps laughing, saying teasing younger men is always so much fun, whereas Jir looks at her annoyingly. Jir gestures, signaling to Lily to drop the topic, and he asks her to go to sleep. Lily agrees and wishes him a good night. After that, Jir starts walking, thinking Lily can be troublesome at times. He keeps repeating this thought. As he reaches the Swampwater River, he sits beside it with crossed legs. While there, he starts contemplating Lily, and his cheeks blush. He wonders if he is in love with her. He thinks to himself that he can't concentrate on training because of that, reminding himself of his master's advice not to get involved with women. He recalls his master, who has been divorced 5 times. 5 years ago, Jir told his master that it was the master who was wrong in the head. Without even thinking, his master worked him several times harder than before. Sitting there, Jir thinks that his master's words hold some weight, and he had been avoiding getting close to women until now. However, he feels it's becoming unavoidable. Reflecting on the 3 months spent alone in the labyrinth without seeing daylight, he recalls prowling around in a dirty state until Lily, a good-natured woman, appeared. He realizes he's already spent a month alone with Lily and has started to develop feelings for her. Gazing at the ceiling, he acknowledges that he has never felt this way before. He had a guardian until 3 years ago, when his master suffered a back injury while fighting a poisonous dragon. He tells himself that he doesn't want to end up like his master. He recalls how his master went on a trip and asked Jir to find an optician or something. Since then, Jir has been walking on his own. People usually see him as his trainee, and many would say unkind things to him. They often challenged him to prove themselves, making it hard for him to get close to women. He thinks to himself that now is his chance, considering how Lily holds his hand after eating and how beautiful her smile is. However, he tries to calm himself down and meditate, because he doesn't want to create any problems. He reflects that even the protective barrier around them is created by Lily to shield them from monsters. He believes it would be unfair to express his feelings under these circumstances, especially when no one else is around to help her if needed. And outside the barrier, there are many monsters. In such a situation, it would be easy for Jir to pressure her for a quick answer. However, he quickly shakes his head to dismiss those thoughts and tries to calm himself. He clears his mind, deciding he will only tell her about his feelings after they have left the labyrinth. Suddenly, as he begins to meditate, a thought crosses his mind. What if Lily is 80 years old? His eyes widen in shock as he considers that the clergy's power peaks in their later years, and a young person couldn't use holy magic so skillfully. He believes Lily might be close to 80 because he has only seen a blurry outline of her body, not even her face. He also assumes that the only reason she holds his hand is for casting spells, not because she has any feelings for him, and he calls himself foolish. In his thoughts, he imagines Lily as a cheerful, merry woman with cute habits and soft hands who smells incredibly good, but is also 80 years old. He convinces himself that there's no doubt about it and shouts to himself that this is the truth. Suddenly, Lily hears him shouting from behind and asks him what's wrong. Jir gets a great shock because he didn't realize Lily was standing there. Lily complains to him for shouting in her face, and Jir apologizes, asking what's going on. Lily explains she thought Jir might be feeling a bit cold while going to sleep, so she used her magic. Without touching Jir, she creates a warm cover over him, and Jir notices her using magic. Jir suddenly feels warm, and Lily mentions it will last for the next 10 hours, advising him not to stay up too late. Jir wonders if she did the magic without touching him, and he asks her to confirm. Lily replies that she doesn't need to touch him for this magic since she's been practicing, and she tells Jir she's leaving. Jir sits there in shock, questioning why she touches his hands when casting the sanitation spell after they eat. He glances at Lily, who is going back to sleep, and clenches his fist. He mutters to himself that even if she is an 80-year-old woman, with this, we don't really know what Jir is going to do or what is going on inside his head. But their adventure surely continues. Kraha peacefully sleeps, and in her dream, she sees Jir falling from a deep place. Suddenly, she wakes up, realizing it was just a dream. After getting ready, she leaves her house, reflecting on the past 4 months where her daily routine hasn't changed. She wonders about the holy nights she encountered and hasn't heard anything since. Everything seems unchanged, as if nothing really happened. While running, she thinks of it as a dream only she knows. Pausing to catch her breath, she contemplates how her daily life keeps going like a wheel, with only the seasons changing, and now fall is ending. She takes deep breaths, and suddenly Holland appears, saying young people are impressive. Kraha looks at him and asks if he's doing solo training. Smoking his cigarette, Holland casually mentions it's nothing serious. He's just keeping his kids company as they've been complaining about gaining weight. He explains they are quite far behind, and he left them in the dust without noticing. Kraha hears this while stretching, and Holland continues smoking and taking deep breaths. He observes Kraha and comments on her being covered in sweat, asking how far she runs. Kraha shares that she runs at least an hour each day and does 5 sets of 10 sprints with varying distances and turns included. She mentions that it depends on the day, and today she had planned to do 10 uphill runs without using any special boosts. Holland smiles and praises her, saying that an adventurer who's quick on their feet is a good one. He adds that she might not like hearing it, but Kraha insists that she's okay with it. She looks confused, but Holland advises her not to harm her body too much and mentions that the church can heal most injuries. However, he emphasizes that no matter how skilled she is, once something bad happens, it can be challenging to recover. Suddenly, they notice some church carriages approaching. Holland comments on the timing, calling it "speak of the devil." Kraha agrees, and Holland notes that church followers are used to waking up early. He suggests they've been working hard. Kraha looks at them, pondering, while Holland continues smoking his cigarette. In her thoughts, Kraha wonders if they finally discovered something important. Holland talks to Kraha about how those fancy carriages are not usual in this town, and he thinks they only started appearing last month. He mentions it wasn't the church doing it back then. Kraha wonders if more knights are on the way, and Holland explains that the church also has knights. He says knights usually don't take action unless it's something big, like preventing the fallen king from coming back. Closing his eyes, he takes a deep breath, thinking he might be overthinking it. Meanwhile, Lily looks down, worried she may have caused trouble for Jur. Suddenly, Holland hears his name being shouted from a distance. He stands up and sees his tired children slowly running toward him. They ask how long he's been waiting, and Holland, laughing, calls them lazy while he smokes a cigarette. Kraha just stands still, watching them quietly. Holland says he can't help feeling afraid of things that are both beautiful and truthful. Meanwhile, Holland wishes her good luck. As he leaves, Holland tells Kraha that he believes one day she will become a much better adventurer than him, at the very least. Lily, with a serious expression, promises to give her best effort. After finishing her training, Kraha goes to the home of a holy knight named Arlene, as she was invited by her. Arlene apologizes to Kraha for calling her late at night, and Kraha assures her that it's okay since she owes her one anyhow. They both take a sip of tea, and Kraha wonders in her mind why Arlene wants to talk to her. Arlene asks Kraha to tell her what happened to their party, if anything. Kraha becomes confused, wondering what Arlene is talking about, and asks her for clarification. Arlene confirms her party had given up on raiding the abyss. Kraha remains in shock and answerless. Arlene wonders if her party did not inform Kraha. With a sorrowful expression, Kraha confirms it but mentions that she knew in a way. She explains that she asked Godok directly what happened, and Godok replied, stating that they have already given up on that raid. Arlene asks Kraha what happened in that labyrinth and wonders what could possibly cause a party that climbed all the way to S rank to throw in the towel so easily, especially since they did not lose even a single party member after only trying it once. Hearing this, Kraha's eyes remain wide open, wondering if Jir was never registered with the party in the first place. Meanwhile, Arlene, still unaware of the real situation, takes another sip and says she'd understand if they had suffered large-scale losses, but it just does not make sense to call off the whole raid after one offensive push. Kraha keeps looking down, lost in her deep thoughts and flashing back to all that happened in the labyrinth, while Arlene continues speaking. She says all she can imagine is that just like them, these guys must have met with some trouble of unknown origin in the labyrinth. Arlene once again asks Kraha why Godok gave up, but Kraha remains silent, drowned in her thoughts. She wonders if it was probably because Godok accomplished what he set out to do, and maybe it was not just an unforeseen accident. Perhaps from the very beginning, his only goal was to kill Jur. However, she remains clueless about such actions of Godok, pondering if he really needed to kill Jur. Suddenly, Arlene calls Kraha's name, realizing that Kraha had been silent, lost in her thoughts, and not attentive to hearing Arlene. After snapping back to the conversation, she gets embarrassed and apologizes to Arlene. She asks if it is trouble of unknown origin, confirmation from Arlene if she heard it right about Arlene mentioning the same happened to her as well. Arlene, looking confused, asks Kraha what she means. After remaining silent for a few seconds, Kraha becomes sad and reveals that during their descent into the abyss, they lost track of one of the four saints, Lililea, after she got caught in a teleportation trap. Kraha remembers the saint she saw with the Holy Knights and listens carefully to Arlene. Arlene expresses that it might sound like an excuse, but there was something strange about that dungeon. Kraha, in shock, wonders what was strange, and Arlene tells her that throughout the original exploration accompanied by the saint, they were more on guard than usual, avoiding fights whenever possible and acting with extreme caution. She further explains that the teleportation magic circle was so worn down, it shouldn't have been able to function, yet it activated only when the saint walked over it. Arlene asks Kraha if it doesn't remind her of traps that can only be activated by a specific target, but Kraha declines, saying it doesn't really. Kraha explains that she heard most traps in magic circles and dungeons are naturally occurring and not complex enough to designate a specific target. Arlene, with a serious face, confirms that Kraha is right, and the knights who started out as adventurers have also mentioned the same. She clenches her fist, expressing that she can deal with failure, but cannot tolerate a failure of unknown origin. Arlene informs Kraha that she believes there's something in that labyrinth, and even the investigation was ordered by the Four Saints themselves. She explains that's why she needs to know what happened to Kraha's party, and why all the other members' lips are sealed. Arlene asks Kraha about why Godok gave up on that raid, and inquires about the dead friend Lily mentioned when they spoke. Kraha looks down in sorrow, remaining silent, contemplating the incident that occurred in the labyrinth. Arlene insists on her giving answers, asking Kraha what she knows. Kraha sits there silently, with the weight of the incident increasing in her mind every second. The next day, Kraha goes to the restaurant to eat some food, and there she sees a boy whose hair she admires. In her mind, she wonders if he is a boy or a girl. The boy greets her with a smile and asks if he can sit beside her. Kraha moves to the next chair, freeing a seat for him. He sits beside her, apologizing, and Kraha, minding her own business, starts eating noodles. In her mind, while eating noodles, she thinks that Arlene, whom she met last night, was beautiful as well. The boy looks at the menu and smirks. He asks Kraha what is the tastiest thing there. Kraha, in shock, looks at him, realizing he is so close to her. She looks at the menu and tells him that the Hamburg steak meal is a classic dish there. The boy asks Kraha what if it is not his first time here. Kraha looks at him while he is smiling and asks her what she would recommend then. Kraha asks him to wait and let her think. She tells him anything will be tasty here, but the meat dishes are particularly great. She suggests if she had to choose something popular with regular patrons, she does not think he could go wrong with the special. She explains that it comes with 3 servings of pork cutlet and as many refills of rice as he wants, and it is enough to fill the stomach of any man, woman, or child. The boy gets happy as he is ready to give an order, but Kraha immediately tells him it would probably be difficult for someone who does not eat much to finish it off, and if he does not eat everything, the owner gets a little upset. The boy thanks Kraha for telling him, flexes his hand, and says that it is just what he wanted to hear. He smiles and asks the waiter to give him 2 specials. Kraha, the waiter, and even the owner looked at him in shock, wondering if he is really ordering too. The waiter immediately notes his order, and Kraha explains to him that ordering 2 whole servings is insane. This special has buried reckless challengers before, and is enough to satisfy even the hungriest customer. The owners created this meal specifically with the desire to leave people so full afterward that they would feel like they were about to pop on their way home. She emphasizes that it's the very essence of the owner's love and tenacity. With shock and panic, she tells him that if he leaves something on the plate, the owner will be angry, while the boy remains silent, waiting for his food. Suddenly, the waitress brings his order, 2 specials. Kraha, including the owners, looks at him in shock. The boy assures Kraha not to worry, calling himself a glutton. He starts eating the food, and within seconds, he immediately finishes both plates. Everyone there cannot believe it is really possible, while the boy, with his full belly, tells them the food was good. After eating, he asks the waitress to bring what Kraha was eating. Kraha, with a shocked face, asks him why he is having some noodles, explaining that she doesn't have much of an appetite, which is why she ordered that. The boy thinks while looking at Kraha and says she does not seem like a bad person. Kraha looks at him, wondering what he just said, but the boy just passes her a smile. He then eats the remaining food and thanks Kraha for telling him about a nice meal. He asks the owner to tell him what the bill is, and after paying it in a hurry, he starts walking towards the exit of the shop, muttering to himself that he will settle things himself. Kraha remains sitting on her chair with the food, observing the boy as he exits the shop. Suddenly, after eating at the restaurant, the boy enters the labyrinth and finds Lily and Jir playing thumb wrestling. Lily with a smile and Jir with shock look at him as he greets them. Jir wonders why another person is here and questions if a person can exist in this place. The boy looks at them and thinks that they must have gotten lost, concluding that they are probably good people. The boy tells Jir not to worry, introduces himself as Eunice, and assures them that he is not up to anything shady. Jir and Lily find Eunice to be extremely shady as they sit around the fire he set up. Eunice sits on a stone and asks Jir if his glasses are broken and he can't see anyone's face. Jir confirms it, and Lily and Jir both look shockingly at the fire. After staring at the flames for some time, Lily, with a smile, tells Jir that fire has finally come to their little village. Jir smiles and agrees. Eunice starts laughing as he hears them talking, and then Jir and Lily both lie down to sleep. However, Eunice asks them if they could wait at least until he is done talking. Lily, lying down sleepily, mentions the campfire, and Eunice informs them that he can start a fire anytime. He then proceeds to tell them about Kraha of the Future Plan and the Holy Knights of the 4th Squad, led by Captain Arlene. Jir and Lily both look at him with shock and ask how he knows about them. Eunice smiles and introduces himself as Eunice, the Archmage of the Stars, a one-person search party. In shock, Jir looks at Eunice, and Lily asks if he is famous for being the youngest registered Archmage in history. Eunice smiles and confirms it, expressing a bit of shock that they are close in age, and he thought they would be more aware of each other. He addresses Jir by the name of the Great Slayer of the Toxic Dragon, and Lily by the name of an island-saving saint. Hearing this, Lily and Jir both look at each other in shock, as they were unaware of each other's achievements. Eunice laughs at the surprise that they don't even know about each other, despite working together for so long. He wonders what in the world they have been doing all this time. Jir, with a little embarrassment, says, catching fish, drinking tasty water, and thumb wrestling. Eunice, after hearing that, feels like that would be so much fun. Following that, Eunice asks them how they managed to get all the way down here, mentioning that it was easier for him than for the two of them. He reveals that he made use of the magic circle, which teleported Saint Lily from the 4th floor and then followed her trail. Lily's face looks surprised, whereas Jir remains confused. Eunice, however, tells Lily that he should be the one getting surprised because the two of them were not satisfied with simply surviving. They even managed to delve into these depths with just the two of them. Eunice says that the evaluations of them being at the height of humanity in terms of ability certainly were not wrong. Lily blushes upon hearing that, while Jir looks at the roof and then shouts loudly, expressing he knew they were still descending. Lily looks at him with disappointment and asks him to count this as a valuable learning experience. Jir questions if she is going to turn it around on him. Angrily, he states that he always agrees to everything, so the person who listens to him is also at fault. Growing more agitated, he loudly insists that everyone should take responsibility for their actions. Lily looks at him for a while, then smiles, apologizing to him and acknowledging that he is right. Defeated and lying on the floor, Jir reflects that the one who initially went in the wrong direction was none other than himself. They share equal responsibility for their travels together, but everything before that was entirely his fault. He worries that if Lily decides to point that out, he might have to grovel on his knees. However, Lily begins to point out that she was the one who started going in the wrong direction, but Jir cuts her off and shouts to Eunice, asking if he is here to rescue them. With a smile, Eunice confirms that he had assumed they would encounter a floor boss on a higher level, putting them at a disadvantage, and as a result, they were simply stranded. However, he did not expect to find them so deep down. Eunice asks them, wondering if they were planning to conquer this place by themselves, but Jir refuses and informs him that was not their plan. Eunice continues, saying if they were planning to do that, then his proposal is quite off the mark. Hearing this, Jir gets annoyed, repeatedly saying no and losing control of his emotions. He sheds tears, expressing that's not what they were doing. It's just that they both have poor senses of direction. Jir explains that they have been trying to climb out the whole time, but instead they kept going deeper and deeper. With a sad face, he allows Eunice to laugh at them if he wants to. However, upon hearing this, Lily starts laughing loudly, and Jir angrily tells her that he didn't ask her to laugh. Eunice starts thinking, and Jir wonders what he is thinking about. Eunice tells them it's nothing, smirks, and says it's an interesting coincidence that they both have poor senses of direction. Jir expresses a bad feeling about it, but Eunice assures him it's completely unrelated. He just happens to know about both of them. Eunice reveals that Jir is the innocent swordsman hero who slayed the toxic dragon that had appeared in an eastern country, and Lily is the saint who prevented an island from sinking. Jir mentions that his master helped him, and Lily adds that she also had the help of the islanders. But Eunice, with a smile, points his finger at them and asks if they know anything about him. Lily guesses if it has something to do with the stars, and Jir asks if he is the youngest archmage in history. Eunice tells them that it's outside his wheelhouse, so he doesn't really know. Lily wonders if Eunice is the one who created a new kind of magic or something. Eunice, still smiling, confirms it as he starts using his magic with his fingers. He explains that there are a few specific requirements for something to be considered magic, and he wonders how he can explain it to them. Making some orbits of stars in front of them, Eunice says if he were to follow their leads and act modestly, he would say that he has only made it this far thanks to meeting his master early on. Confused, Jir asks Eunice to hold up and inform him that he couldn't follow what Eunice is talking about. Eunice explains to Jir in simpler words that his magic draws powers from the stars. Jir finds it hard to believe, and Eunice reveals that he holds the title of an archmage, allowing him to use this power even in places where the light of the stars doesn't reach. He mentions being able to use his magic in their current location. Jir's curiosity rises, and he asks Eunice with frustration to get to the point already. Holding his shirt, he gets angry, stating that his heart is about to burst. Eunice smiles and asks if that's true. He responds with a big smile and a thumbs up, saying he's happy to help in a place like this, but mentions his power is reduced by 80%, making him completely useless. Upon hearing this, Jir loses his patience for a moment and shouts loudly, expressing his need for a break. Here, we have a unique trio: a swordsman with a poor sense of direction, a clergy with a poor sense of direction, and a new mage who is also not lesser than an idiot. A full set of idiots is lost here in the deeper floors of the labyrinth, but at least now they know they were always going in the wrong direction. Eunice walks on the swamp water and wonders if they have been stuck on the floor for the last 3 weeks. Jir confirms it and shows Eunice the real problem. They point to a huge door, which amazes Eunice. Jir tells Eunice that even when he hit it with the sword, there was no response. Eunice just stands there staring at the door, and Lily also confirms what Jir just said. However, Lily tells Eunice that she knows there is something like a magic circle carved into the surface of that door, but she can't see it clearly because it's solid black. Eunice agrees, and Lily asks if he can draw it for her. With a smiley face, Eunice agrees and calls it easy. He uses his power and starts generating blobs of water around. Jir remains in shock, wondering what the heck is happening. Meanwhile, the water splashes down and Eunice controls it with his power. Jir asks Eunice what that is, and Eunice, standing beside him, smiles and answers that it's a fairly insignificant spell. He explains to Jir that he generated some water to fill the depressions on the surface of the door. After that, he pressed it against the ground, making sure the shape remains unchanged as they turn the page on the book. Lily moves forward as the magic circle appears clearly in front of them. Eunice looks at the circle, confused, and asks Lily what kind of magic circle it is. Jir just stands there, confusion at its peak, as he does not know what they are talking about. However, Eunice wonders if Lily knows about this, considering the coincidence that brought them all the way here. Lily denies it, saying she is not sure if it is coincidence, but she never imagined it would be so clear. An apocryphal magic circle and an apocryphal beast. Eunice thinks about it, and Lily, with a serious face, reveals that it feels like this labyrinth was likely built by someone linked to the fallen king. The Rasti region has separate scriptures known as apocrypha, distinct from the canonical scriptures. It's not meant for moral teachings or narrative tales. Instead, it details the ancient story of the fallen king, the great enemy aiming to destroy God and the world, and the intense battle with the apostle of God, Rasti. Returning to the story, Eunice playfully teases Lily and Jir about their terrible sense of direction. Jir, annoyed, warns Eunice not to wander off on his own, to which Eunice responds with laughter, declaring himself a part of the group. Eunice highlights how Lily and Jir consistently went in the wrong direction for the past 4.5 months, but still managed to defeat several floor bosses. Lily wonders if this makes them apocryphal beasts. Meanwhile, Jir, looking clueless, listens as Eunice explains that these beasts were used by the fallen king. During his battle with Rasti, some theories suggest these creatures were actually part of the fallen king. Eunice adds that these beasts were so formidable that it took an entire army to defeat just one, and some greater beasts could rival a whole country in power. Jir, with a slightly disappointed expression, concedes that it makes sense, while Lily shoots him an annoyed look. Lily teases Jir, asking if he finds it all a bit exaggerated. Jir, looking confused, clarifies that he's not saying it's a lie, but doesn't seem entirely convinced. Lily playfully pokes Jir's cheeks and reveals that the horse monster he killed is called a nightmare, and classifies it as a lesser beast. Jir, shocked, wonders if what he defeated was really a lesser beast, and asks Lily to explain what apocryphal beasts are. Lily shares that she thought these creatures were destroyed by Apostle Rasti a long time ago. Jir questions if that means the rumors are true, and if there are surviving beasts or if the fallen king created the labyrinth. Eunice chimes in, saying they are getting close to the truth, and at the very least, there are some lingering traces here. The magic circle etched into the door is also mentioned in the Apocrypha. Lily questions Jir if he recognizes the magic circle, mentioning it as a holy magic she has seen a few times before. She believes it's a magic circle Rasti used, recorded only in the original and first 7 copies of the Apocrypha. Eunice, puzzled, asks Lily if she doesn't refer to Rasti as apostle, to which Lily confirms and explains her discomfort with that title. Lily notes that the magic circle is not exactly the same, emphasizing it's not a normal protective spell. She clarifies that it doesn't just prevent outsiders from entering, but also stops whatever's inside from getting out. Jir questions if it's a spell cast by Rasti. Wouldn't it be better not to break it? Eunice responds that it's not necessarily the case, as there must be a key to breaking the spell. Lily agrees with this perspective, and Jir contemplates the idea of a key in his mind. Eunice shares that Rasti's identity is uncertain, questioning if she was even a person. He mentions that someone like her should have been able to construct a perfect magic circle. Eunice explains that the magic circle is complex, but has been designed to allow it to be broken by a holy magic user of a certain level and a magic analyst. It's a spell meant to be broken. Jir wonders what it means, and Eunice ponders if this labyrinth is truly linked to the Fallen King. He explains that it has become a checkpoint accessible to Rosti herself or another holy magic user, implying that it excludes those who are not loyal to the Fallen King. Jir and Lily gaze at him curiously, and Eunice confesses that he doesn't know the exact implication of this. Disappointed, Jir declares he's going to bed, and Lily chuckles, appreciating it as an amusing Archmage joke. She agrees with Eunice that they lack sufficient clues for now. Eunice holds Jir, suggesting they might not have all the information yet. Eunice asks Jir if he has any knowledge as an adventurer. He questions whether Jir researched anything about the labyrinth before entering, to which Jir, looking a bit confused, responds that he doesn't know anything. Eunice laughs and queries if Jir studied the layout. Annoyed, Jir emphasizes that he's not and never has been an adventurer. He was just an outsider. The most he heard about the labyrinth is how strong the monsters inside are. Eunice remarks that it seems Jir hasn't even registered as an adventurer yet. This revelation infuriates Jir, thinking about how much of a trickster Godak is. Eunice adds that he entered such a restricted area. Jir will likely be detained and fined the moment he leaves. Jir sits there in distress, and Lily, smiling, comments on how sorry she feels for Jir the more she learns about him. Eunice, contemplating the situation, agrees, and Jir frustratedly remarks that they've talked so much about this. Lily suggests that it seems Godak was overly prepared for this, and had planned something for Jir from the beginning. Eunice contemplates this, and Lily asks Jir if he has any ideas. Angrily, Jir responds that he doesn't know anything that would make Godak lie to him. Eunice straightforwardly states that he has a hard time believing Jir is an unfortunate idiot. Jir retorts angrily, suggesting that it would be better if Eunice didn't think that way. Eunice expresses his thoughts, saying that one could argue Lily and he were thrown in here on purpose, but Jir, being the greatest swordsman of an era, is too significant to be involved in this matter by accident. Jir, with a frustrated face, mentions that he is not that strong, as he has never beaten his master. Eunice compliments Jir, acknowledging him as the strongest for defeating the apocryphal beast single-handedly, even without fighting at full strength due to not wearing his glasses. Jir feels embarrassed and tells Eunice not to mention that. In his thoughts, Jir reflects on this and starts feeling proud of his strength. Suddenly, Lily hits his finger, warning him that pride is the enemy. Jir experiences pain, shouts, and questions if ganging up on him is the latest trend. Eunice suggests stopping the teasing for now and proposes that the three of them go through the door. Jir and Lily express shock as Eunice proposes going back through the door. Jir, in his thoughts, considers it lame to backtrack after coming so far to conquer the labyrinth. Despite his initial resistance, Jir agrees with a smile, but Lily doesn't seem satisfied. She questions the delay and worries about their safety. Eunice reassures her, mentioning that he informed Arlene in advance about the possibility of a delayed return. Eunice suggests that instead of going to the surface, it might be faster to reach the deepest floor and then use mana from there for teleportation. Jir wonders if teleporting to the entrance is possible, and Eunice confirms it. Lily agrees, raising her hand, and Eunice, with a smirk, remarks on the suspicious nature of the labyrinth. Eunice reveals that Three Saints asked him to investigate the labyrinth's interior when he had spare time. He emphasizes the uncertainty of the effort and time needed to reach this depth again, suggesting that their current collective strength is a unique opportunity. Jir proposes making a deal with themselves, expressing that he and Lily have come this far on their own. Lily agrees, and Eunice, with a big smile, declares his intention to join them, making them an invincible trio. Eunice mentions ominous predictions by the Magic Federation and the discovery of apocryphal beasts and magic, adding that something significant seems imminent. He looks towards the roof and asks Jir and Lily for their assistance in facing whatever challenges lie ahead. Lily happily takes Eunice's hands and expresses her gratitude for his timely arrival, looking forward to working together. Jir, also smiling, thanks him, acknowledging that Eunice saved him from wandering aimlessly with Lily. To decide their way, they decide to play rock, paper, scissors. However, Jir points out that he's at a disadvantage because he can't see what the others choose. Lily suggests he touch their hands to feel their choices, leading to a playful argument about who will decide and how. In frustration, Jir and Eunice declare that they are incredibly useless. Eventually, Jir suggests that they all go in different directions and then reconvene at the same spot. Lily and Eunice are astonished at Jir's suggestion, but Jir proposes a race. Whoever makes it back first becomes their guide. Eunice finds the idea exciting, and the trio sets off in different directions. Surprisingly, Eunice claims the first place, returning within 3 hours and 56 minutes, followed by Jir in second place at 5 hours and 12 minutes. Lily arrives last after 8 hours and 38 minutes. Eunice and Jir express disbelief that Lily made it back, and she tearfully admits her joy at finally returning. Eunice, also emotional, contemplates the human condition, wondering if there could be anyone more useless than him. Jir, relieved that everyone returned safely, expresses his happiness. The day after, opinions about Jir are divided, with accusations of him being cautious and lacking appeal. However, the door blocking their way opens the next day, emitting a solemn sound, revealing the path to the deepest level. Jir, while looking at the roof, questions himself if he really needs to be at this party. Lily and Eunice look at him with confusion, whereas it's been a month since this trio has been together, and after the arrival of Eunice, their adventure has really smoothed out. In the beginning, they acted meek, as Jir took care of the monsters and Eunice just followed along until he got used to things. But before long, Eunice gets the hang of things, and their party becomes one of the strongest ever. In the present time, Eunice with this magic rains down a scale of light, and all the monsters die in this rain within a second. With a sad face, Jir shows gratitude for Eunice's magic as they haven't encountered a single monster lately. However, he makes a crying face, saying he feels genuinely useless. Lily, in an attempt to make him feel better, says it doesn't seem like her sanctuary barrier is needed all that much either. No one really gets hurt anymore, and besides, Eunice can create something similar to it anyway. She points out that they both use light, meaning they fill the same criteria. Jir also starts crying, saying that now that she mentions it, his secret sword technique has a name associated with the moon, and the moon and the stars are closely related to. Eunice asks him not to say something so sad, or else he will also start crying. He mocks him and then starts laughing, but with a smile, he apologizes and informs that he was feeling a little left out. Jir says to Eunice that he might be the type to easily succumb to loneliness. Eunice informs that it was inevitable, and he is looking forward to meeting them both from the bottom of his heart. He looks upward and says it's the first time he has walked together with two people the same age as him. He laughs loudly and says deep down, he is happy that he can barely stand it, and it's like being on a field trip. Lily comments on Eunice, saying he is so cute, and Eunice asks them if they have ever been on a field trip. They both answer that they have, and Eunice tells them she entered the Grand Library when she was very young. Eunice informs that he never had the chance to do stuff like that, and Jir wonders if that's the sort of place they need to enter when they are young. Eunice informs them it's not like that. Actually, in his case, he was able to get in because his master had close ties to the Grand Library, and it's quite rare for someone of that age to make it into the heart of a place like that. Lily, with excitement, confirms that means this is Eunice's first trip. Eunice agrees, and they both start walking around with excitement. Jir, with a disappointed face, tells them not to let their guard down, thinking to himself that they have tripled their fighting power since that time. However, since it's the hardest labyrinth, they should not let their guard down. Eunice and Lily agree, but Eunice tells them that the three of them are the best in their fields, and he is not even being optimistic when he says their party is the strongest. He informs that if they can't manage to make it through this labyrinth, then mankind has yet to reach the peak of their abilities. He further says their current state is only natural, and it would be more terrifying if the three of them were holding back. Lily, with a smile, says Eunice is really long-winded. Eunice laughs and says he is a narcissist, and Lily confirms, while laughing, that the price of their talent is having ultra-poor senses of direction. Eunice declines, saying he is not that bad, and Jir, with an annoying face, tells Lily that the ultra is only her. Lily shouts, saying she doesn't want to be the only one. However, after that, Eunice with this magic sets fire, and they start eating. Eunice, while eating an awful fish, asks why all the S-rank party stopped at the 3rd floor. Lily, munching, looks at him, and Eunice continues, saying they were all practically the best of their respective eras, and he feels like they should have been able to make it this far in due time. But Jir gulps the fish and says the 3rd floor boss is just way too strong. Eunice and Lily both look at him with curiosity, and Eunice asks again if it was really that strong. Jir confirms it and says he seriously thought he might die. He further says that assuming that was an apocryphal beast, then that one had to be the greatest one. Eunice asks if it was stronger than the nightmare, and Jir confirms it with certainty. Eunice says that's different from what he heard, and asks Jir if that was before the transformation. Jir informs them that its first phase was about as strong as that nightmare thing, and it's what comes after that was truly horrific. He gets those flashbacks as he tells them that if he hadn't raised his rank by slaying that toxic dragon, he definitely would not have won. Lily asks if he had that experience back then, and Jir confirms, saying he really would have died without that experience. Jir wonders if she has really gone through the same thing, and Lily confirms it, saying she had a ton of little kids ask her, and they acted like Lily was lying. She informs that in frustration and annoyance, she ends up telling them it was a lie, and Jir remains confused. Eunice thinks about it and says despite not being believed, she still explained what it's like. Lily calls Eunice's name and Eunice apologizes, saying he got lost in thought. Eunice adds that he has no definitive proof right now, so he might be overthinking. Lily, with detective humor, comments that it's what someone would say who is about to die in a detective novel. Jir, with a smile, also agrees. Suddenly, they see the next door, and Jir angrily says it's his turn. They start walking towards the last door, leading into the deepest floor of the hardest labyrinth that would take a total of 10 days to unseal. Little do they know, after 2 days, 2 of these people would lose their lives. On the other hand, Kraha is in shock, looking at her burned house. Holland appears with a cigarette in his mouth and a packet in his hand. He feels sorry for Kraha and gives the packet to her. Kraha thanks him and takes the packet. Holland asks if she is hurt, and Kraha informs him that she is not. She mentions that last night she was doing some clerical work at the party lodgings. Holland asks if the knights are investigating, and Kraha informs him that no, a holy knight is supposed to take a look for her. Holland wonders if they are related, as he informs Kraha that Godok also disappeared last night. With a shocking look, Kraha looks at Holland's face and he informs her that all the guys got together and went looking for Godok, but they haven't found a single trace of him yet. He advises Kraha to get out of this town, and Kraha wonders why he is saying this. Holland explains that there have been eyewitness reports that an archmage entered the ruins, and it was the archmage of the stars of all people. Originally, their party was just A rank, and the rank was forcefully raised due to Godok's magic sword. So to be perfectly honest, he always thought raiding Abyss was too much for them to handle. But now, things could get even worse as he is starting to see there could be more to the story. Kraha wonders what more and asks about the other party members. Holland, after a little bit of silence, says they can't leave. He tells her that ever since Godok picked up that magic sword, they've all been subservient to him. He informs with frustration that they all have things they need to protect, and advises Kraha not to become one of them. Holland tells Kraha that it's too soon for her to be suffocating from her own regrets. Suddenly, Arlene appears, saying if that's what Holland feels, she orders him to tell her everything. With a smirk on his face, Holland reveals Future Plane was not always the kind of party it is now, and they used to have a great time killing monsters together. He informs that they might be unrefined, but they used to prevail with strategy and teamwork. He sees flashbacks of them adventuring and having fun together, remembering how good the time was. With happy memories in his eyes, he states from his mouth that it was the best party. Holland, with Arlene and Kraha, goes to a restaurant. As the 3 of them sit at the table, Holland further tells them that a long time ago, Godok was not that kind of guy, and he was a good leader. While holding his cup, they had the best time when they were at a B-rank party. He informs that the main members of their current lineup joined around that time, and they had not been able to demonstrate their full power with other groups. Their party was like a rehabilitation center for guys like them. He tells Kraha that Godok had that kind of ability. Kraha wonders then why he stabs one of his allies in the back. Holland, with a cigarette in his mouth, says that's a good question, but he has no doubt that picking up that magic sword was the trigger. After that, he completely changed. Kraha questions where he found the magic sword, and Holland tells her it was in the middle of the floor of an A-rank labyrinth that's similar to the depths of the ocean called Deep Depths. Arlene thinks about it and says she has read about it in reports, asking if there was a place filled with high salinity water. Holland confirms it, and Arlene says she can't claim that she knows much about it, but wonders if magic swords are typically found in places like that. Holland declines it and says labyrinths are not that special, and generally, if you want to find something like a magic sword, you need to scour prehistoric ruins. He reveals that he figured out that it was something left by a dead person. Kraha asks with a little shock, left by a dead person? And Holland confirms it. He further informs that in A-rank labyrinths like that, if a party is wiped or retreats, they will often leave behind supplies and other things. However, a magic sword would definitely be their most valuable asset, so there's no way someone would just discard it when retreating. Arlene guesses then it must be from a dead person, and Holland confirms it. He further informs that once Godok had obtained his magic sword, the only thing holding them back, their lack of combat strength, disappeared. They were able to get certified as an S-rank party without a hitch, but there was always something off about Godok since then. He tells that he'd known him for a long time, but Holland still had people he needed to protect, so he submitted his resignation from the party before anything major could happen. However, after that, one day he got home in the evening and saw Godok sitting on the table with his children. With a smirk, Godok tells Holland that he has a great family and he is looking forward to working with him for years to come. Holland agrees, and while blowing a cigarette and looking at the cup of tea, he says he had people he needed to protect. Kraha asks if that's the reason why no one lifted a finger on Godok when Godok did that to Jir. Holland, with a little sorrowful expression, says he expects so. Arlene says no wonder no one spoke out. Kraha raises her hand and tells that she knows this is their fault, but asks if Holland is okay for what he is talking about the stuff, and asks what about his family. Holland tells her that the Holy Knights have been hanging around their house for the last couple days. He tells so if Godok happens to come near, he does not imagine that they'll just stand around and watch. He questions Arlene if he is right. Arlene smiles and compliments Holland that he has got sharp eyes and informs reinforcements arrived just a few days ago. Holland takes a sip and winks at her, and questions what these recent incidents have to do with them. He asks, why is the church taking action? Arlene shares that the Holy Knight commanders suspect the fallen king is related to the situation at hand, and Holland confusedly asks her what she is talking about, wondering if that's not just a fairy tale. He angrily asks what do apocryphal scriptures from thousands of years ago have to do with what is going on now. Kraha questions if the fallen king is really around in the present today. Arlene says she understands what they are saying, but even now she does not have a clear answer. But she tells the three saints suggested as much that simultaneously, the Magic Federation has also had the same kind of feeling. She further explains that among the observers is that famous archmage. Holland puts his hand on his face, wondering what is going on. He asks if she means that Godok is also connected with the fallen king somehow. Arlene says that's the assumption for now, and Kraha looks at the cup of coffee. Hearing Arlene say this is just a hypothesis, but if they look closely at the timeline, she thinks it's likely that the magic sword, which reduces things to nothingness, is the fallen king. Kraha suddenly asks them what that noise is as she feels something, and notices that the coffee in the cup is also moving. Suddenly, they rush outside and see an instrumental apocryphal beast. On the other hand, in the labyrinth, Jir slices the monster in between with the sword. Eunice looks at him and says he is the useless one now, and Jir smirks, saying now he understands how he felt before. Ever since they went through that second door, he has had the undeniable feeling that these beasts are incredibly strong. The monsters became so formidable that they were undaunted by Eunice's magic and strong enough to destroy a small village on their own. Jir questions them if it is really a deep labyrinth and thinks about which floor they are on, guessing they are on the 170th floor. He wonders how many floors there are in total, giving a guess of 200 floors. Eunice gives his guess, saying there will be 216 floors. Jir questions why such a half-assed number, and Eunice tells him it's 6 cubed. Lily looks at the roof and says she thinks they are almost at the end. Eunice and Jir both look at Lily, and Lily immediately confusingly tells them it's just a hunch, because the saint says she has a hunch. Eunice laughs, saying that's a convincing argument, and Lily runs behind Jir angrily to punch him. She punches at him, saying she feels much better when she is at home. Jir lies on the ground and says maybe this is what the labyrinth experience is supposed to be. Lily confirms that adventurers have it hard, and Eunice says that in that case, it's definitely not the kind of place you would want to delve into too many times, unless he is with reliable people like Lily and Jir. Jir, in his brain while lying there, thinks if he had continued this adventure accompanying future plan, he'd never have made it this far, and he knows they simply wouldn't have the strength necessary to deal with multiple beasts on the floor. He thinks to himself that it's these three who could just go this deep into the labyrinth and says maybe there's a point to this after all. Lily suddenly notices Jir saying something. Jir looks at her and tells her he is just talking to himself. Lily tells him he talks a lot with himself, and Jir wonders if he really is. Lily comes closer to him and tells him with a smile he surely does. Eunice smiles and says he is so envious and wishes he could have joined the adventure earlier. Jir says it's a childish thing to say, but Eunice says it's always been his dream to have friends of his age. Lily laughs and says then let's exchange letters after they get out of here, and tells Jir it also goes for him as well. Lily blushes a little and questioningly says sure. Seeing this, Eunice says sadly that they have a cold-blooded person here. Jir tells her no, it's just that once he gets out of here, he will be back to traveling, so even if he sends something, it will be hard to get it delivered. Lily tells if she writes down where he will be headed next, then she can just send it to the mail shop in that town, and Jir wonders if that kind of service even exists. Lily winks and tells him her writing is so cute it will leave him trembling in surprise. Jir keeps on blushing, whereas Eunice, with tears in his eyes, asks Jir if he will do that for him. Eunice says he will send Jir 7 letters a week with a cipher so he can fully enjoy them. Jir, with an annoyed face, wonders why he has to complicate things so much. Eunice and Lily both smile, whereas Jir stands there in confusion. After that, the three of them look at the bigger gate in front of them. Eunice says if Lily's words are to be achieved, they will soon be through the labyrinth. Lily says it's taken so long that she has started to become numb. Eunice and Lily both raise their hands and say, let's proceed without getting overconfident. Jir puts his hand on the door and asks them if they are ready. Eunice, with a smile, says whenever, and Lily, with a punch pose, says wherever. Jir, in his brain, thinks that compared to that horrible beginning, this adventure isn't so bad. He tells them, alright. Jir with excitement says, "Open sesame," and starts opening the gate. Suddenly, he sees something, leaving him totally astonished and shocked. Suddenly, after opening the door, Jir pushes Eunice back and sees a big flying monster in front of him that takes a strike at them. Lily with her magic shield stops it and protects Eunice, but Jir couldn't defend it and he gets hit, causing his death. Suddenly, a magical event occurs, and Jir feels as if his soul is escaping. Time starts rewinding for a single second. Within Jir's shattered body and consciousness, one thing remains: his soul. There's a dazzling light in front of him that looks like it may explode, but Jir manages to reach out his hand as if grabbing hold of that soul. In a stance he had imagined countless times before, that he had visualized countless times before, so much happens within this short period. Jir uses his killer technique to strike that monster, and with his secret sword Eris, using his skill Moondream, he manages to kill the monster. Suddenly, he sits down, breathing heavily, covering his face with his hand, sweating immensely. He wonders what the hell just happened. He says he remembers the instant he entered the boss room and the floor boss caught him off guard with just one attack, killing him. He wonders how he is alive. He looks at his hand, shivering, as he hears Lily's voice telling Eunice not to move. Eunice lies there in blood, and Lily tells him he really overdid it, instructing Eunice not to talk as she uses her magic. And within seconds, Eunice is healed up. Eunice smiles and says he thought he was a goner for sure. He tells them he really was dead and informs Jir that it was just like he said. Pride leads to pain. Jir asks him what the hell happened earlier, and Eunice explains he turned back time by 1 single second. Lily and Jir look at Eunice with complete shock, and Lily asks if that's the new magic he mentioned before. Eunice laughs and says she got it right. It was the primary factor in him being certified as an archmage. He tells them it's a new technique he found at the very end of the stars. He looks at the roof, imagining stars, and says he usually has to pay more attention to the alignment of the stars and do a bunch of troublesome preparation to pull it off. But this time, he did it by force. He tells he can only rewind a brief amount of time, so he is really glad that Jir beat the floor boss in that single second window he could provide them. With a smile, he further says he is glad their struggle didn't prove to be in vain in the end, and tells Lily that if she had not protected him, he would not have been able to recite the full incantation. He tells her that the organs he blew up served as payment for the technique and would not have come back. Jir, sitting there, giggles as he suddenly notices the term organs. He wonders what that means, and Eunice, to explain, tells him that as this is a cave and he used that spell on a place with no mana from the stars, the only thing he could bet on was his own life force. With a laugh, he says the aftermath was pretty incredible, and his insides burst like a balloon with a resounding pop. Jir feels a little scared hearing this, and he tells Eunice that it sounds way too intense, and suggests he take a nap. Eunice thanks Lily for helping him, saying he is feeling downright invigorated. He mentions that people should be calling Lily a great saint rather than just a saint. Lily agrees, saying they should say that, as they already have a hero in an archmage, and she is the only one without a grand name. Lily looks at Jir, saying he can't say that now, not after losing like that. He thinks he was going to kick the bucket. He actually did, but if Eunice had not been there, he would have been dead. Lily also sits, looking a bit terrified, saying she is so discouraged that she does not want to move anymore. Eunice laughs loudly and says this is kind of getting hard. Jir, with a straight face, says thank you to both of them, and Lily and Eunice, with a smile, say he is welcome. The trio sits there together, tiredly on the ground. Eunice asks Jir if from here on out, he thinks he can keep beating the floor boss like he did before. Jir thinks about it for a second and then lowers his head, saying he has no idea. With a sad face, he says he defeated the one just now with the effects of the awakening, and Eunice tells him he gets what he means. Lily, with a smile, says his rank rose immensely. Jir says at that time, he thinks he was able to immediately use time reversal because of the effects of the awakening right after the experience. 3 times now, folks like Jir have gone through something called the experience. Nobody's really put a clear definition on it, but whether you're facing life or death situations, or overcoming tough times, or even delving into the big truths like mages do, this experience thing happens. After going through it, people's abilities shoot up big time. For a short while, they get into this state called awakening, where they can do crazy things. Jir, for example, turned the whole battle around with one powerful strike, and that was probably because of this experience thing. And it's not just a short-term boost. Climbing up the ranks for a long time helps them grow in a huge way, putting them on a totally different level than before. Sure, if they keep growing the normal way, they could still get that powerful, but thanks to the experience, they fast-track their way there. Whether or not someone has had this experience really shows how good swordsmen and mages actually are. The experience makes the journey to becoming super powerful a whole lot quicker. Eunice looks upwards and Jir says, "Let's turn back." as he asks after having the experience if one's abilities increase but the effects of the awakening have already dissipated. Eunice and Lily confirm it, and Jir thinks he can think of himself as having the same level of power as his master from the time when he fought the toxic dragon. Eunice asks him if he is confident that, without the effects of the awakening, he can encounter a floor boss. Jir, with a stressed face, tells him he is definitely not. In his brain, he thinks back to when he got split in two by that beam of light. It wasn't because he was being careless, but in a contest of pure strength, he was swatted like a bug. The world is a big place, and he is still inexperienced. It's because he is aware of that fact that he speaks with his head down, saying that while there is life, there is hope, and it might take them a while to get back to the surface. He lifts up his face and says that is far better than never making it back. Eunice finds it a reasonable suggestion, as he would like to do that, but he asks Lily if she has something in mind. He asks her if she knows how powerful the recent floor boss was. Lily thinks about it and then says it was a middle beast. Jir looks at her in shock, and she tells him furthermore, it was below average in terms of combat ability. Listening to this, Jir feels traumatized as he didn't imagine how powerful they are. Lily begins to explain that orchestras are a species of words, and handling them is incredibly difficult because each falls between a lesser and middle apocryphal beast in its own right. According to Rasti, they operate in groups, and if their commander is taken down, victory becomes attainable. Jir and Eunice contemplate this, and Eunice questions if Rasti is genuinely about to come. Lily expresses uncertainty, prompting Jir to wonder if it might be a different species. However, Lily asserts her certainty, explaining that apocryphals always have a number written on their bodies, indicating their species, and in this case, it's an orchestra. Jir reflects on Lily's earlier statement, acknowledging that it's classified as a middle apocryphal beast, yet in terms of strength alone, it appears to be a lesser beast. Despite attempting humility, Jir realizes he overestimated his own strength and succumbed to pathetic pride. He grapples with the realization that there are individuals who never accept defeat and grow stronger, but he doesn't identify with that mindset. Observing Jir lost in thought, Lily wonders if he is feeling depressed. Meanwhile, Jir contemplates whether the beast that killed him was one of the less powerful types. Despite his attempt at humility, he acknowledges his own foolish overestimation of strength. As Lily looks at Jir, who is seemingly lost in thought, she wonders if he is on the verge of tears. However, Jir clarifies that he is not depressed. He suggests that given their potential inability to handle a greater apocryphal beast, it would be prudent for them to turn back. Eunice agrees with Jir, and Lily inquires if something is bothering Eunice. He concurs and raises a question about the third boss floor. Specifically, Eunice asks if Jir personally defeated it. Jir confirms this and details how the floor collapsed due to Godok's magic sword, leading to Jir killing the monster while falling. Eunice seeks clarification on whether the third floor boss fell with Jir and engaged in a fight rather than simply perishing after leaving the boss chamber. Jir affirms that they both fell from the boss chamber. Eunice inquires if the floor boss had a number written on it, prompting Jir to jot down the number, after which Eunice seeks Lily's input on the matter. Lily examines the number and states that it belongs to one of the lesser beasts, but it possesses considerable power, even surpassing that of the nightmare. Eunice adds that in essence, the beast Jir defeated wasn't the third floor boss. This revelation leaves Jir in complete shock as he grapples with the implications. However, the deeper one ventures into the labyrinth, the more potent the floor bosses become. There are no exceptions to this rule, and depending on one's capabilities, the difficulty of defeating them may fluctuate. This also implies that the mana contained within their bodies increases with each descending floor. Eunice raises his finger and notes that Jir encountering such a formidable opponent on the third floor is peculiar, marking just the beginning of the bizarre occurrences. He mentions the typical rule that floor bosses can't leave their designated boss chambers. Although he acknowledges he doesn't fully understand the workings, Eunice emphasizes that it's a fundamental characteristic of the labyrinth, and even middle apocryphal beasts adhere to this rule. Eunice points out that in fact, the orchestra didn't attack until Jir opened the door, raising the question of how a weaker apocryphal beast managed to emerge from the boss chamber and transform upon encountering them. Eunice proposes the simplest hypothesis. The third floor boss was an apocryphal beast freed from the labyrinth's rule. Jir reacts with shock, and Eunice, gesturing with his finger, suggests that the bonds of the labyrinth are weakening. Jir questions if that means the beast might not be able to maintain their mana outside the labyrinth, to which Eunice admits he has no idea. He shares historical context, explaining the apocryphal era when monsters roamed outside labyrinths and were humanity's formidable neighbors, predating their births. Jir, visibly stressed, queries whether such an era could occur nowadays, considering it happened so long ago. Eunice conveys that, in a worst-case scenario, it could happen, as they currently face an apocryphal beast. He mentions the belief that the apocryphal era could be reenacted, leaving Jir unable to comprehend the situation. Jir questions if Eunice might be overthinking, suggesting that perhaps the third floor boss was a unique case. Turning to Lily for clarification, he is met with a moment of silence before she reveals that some pages from the Apocrypha were lost, leaving Jir even more astonished. Lily explains that a fire broke out in the library 700 years ago, causing part of the original Apocrypha and the 7 books of the first manuscript to be destroyed, almost as if by design, starting from the second manuscript onwards. Due to the loss of information, it is challenging to determine what is true. Lily reflects on her childhood curiosity, where she would ponder questions like, was the fallen king annihilated? And how did Rasti fight him? Now, with a hand on her lips, she discloses the truth. Rasti didn't kill the fallen king, but instead sealed him in this place. Jir reacts with complete shock, while Eunice smiles, affirming that this aligns with his thoughts. Eunice gazes at the labyrinth and states that it's not a natural occurrence. It was formed from the structure Rasti created, with the outpouring of mana from the fallen king sealed within, making it a pseudo-labyrinth. Lily speculates that information about this place might have been contained in the lost pages that were burned in the fire or intentionally destroyed. Jir questions if this implies that the bonds are weakening and the monsters are attempting to escape. However, Lily dismisses this notion, stating that it is likely far more serious, revealing that the labyrinth's seal is on the verge of breaking. In shock, Jir asks about the consequences if the seal breaks. Eunice ponders the situation and asserts that it won't just end there. The apocryphal beasts bound to the labyrinthine structure would be unleashed onto the surface world. He emphasizes that they would be helplessly destroyed if that were to happen. Lily adds that it's not just about the release of the apocryphal beasts. If the fallen king reawakens, the world will be flooded with mana, leading to the destruction of civilization, similar to what happened in prehistoric times. Jir's face reflects terror as he sits down, exclaiming that there is all the more reason for them to turn back. With wide open eyes and a shocked expression, he emphasizes that the three of them can't keep vital information to themselves. Jir suggests that they need to find a way out of the labyrinth and inform everyone about what they have learned. He insists that their strength doesn't make them the best, urging them to swallow their pride and abandon the idea of handling everything on their own. Eunice and Lily turn their attention to Jir, their gaze shifting upward as they notice the impending total solar eclipse. Eunice explains that's the day when mana is at its densest, speculating that the seal might break during that moment or someone on the surface might make a move first. Jir, inquisitive, questions the term surface, and Eunice suggests that the cathedral in the city might be a linchpin maintaining the seal from above. Jir, his face reflecting shock, asks if someone is planning to destroy the cathedral. Lily suggests that it might be someone devoted to the fallen king preemptively eliminating a powerful swordsman who got close to the city. Jir looks serious and wonders if it's Godok. Eunice confidently states that it seems like Godok's plan didn't work out, clenching his fist and saying it's time for them to do something. Lily agrees, but Jir stays quiet, trying to understand what's happening. Eunice tells Jir that a solar eclipse is coming in 3 days at noon. Even though they're not sure how many floors are left in the labyrinth, Eunice emphasizes that if they don't seal the fallen king before the eclipse, they will fail. Jir sits there in shock, trying to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Lily addresses Jir, stating that the situation has nothing to do with him. She explains that both she and Eunice came for a mission, and if either of them leaves, they won't be able to reseal the fallen king. She asserts that Jir is not needed, leaving him with a sense of sadness. Moving ahead, there's no sure promise of staying alive, a risky fact that was true even before. But now, things get even more dangerous. Running into bigger, scarier creatures isn't just a fight for life anymore. It means certain death. Lily lowers her head and expresses gratitude to Jir for guiding them this far. She tells him with a smile that he has done enough. Sitting there, Jir reflects on his journey through the labyrinth, facing his own weakness, unable to fight properly without his glasses. He realizes that he might lose his life or fail to protect his friends. Eunice, standing nearby, acknowledges the limited time before the solar eclipse and understands that Jir has no obligation to fight. However, he earnestly asks Jir to risk his life to save the world and lead them to the deepest level of the labyrinth. Jir thinks about the big responsibility he's taking on and realizes he's not good at much except swinging his sword. But even so, he feels happy about it. Lily asks if he's sure about helping them, and Jir happily raises his hand, saying that without someone leading him, he might never get out of the labyrinth to see the sky again. Lily says thanks while holding one of his hands, and Eunice holds the other. Jir remembers that he came to the labyrinth to conquer it in the first place. So, the three of them kept going on their journey. Even though they weren't as cheerful as before, there was still a bit of hope in their steps. One of them asks which way they should go, and Jir responds that based on his gut feeling, they should go this way. Kraha, standing there in shock as she looks at the monster, recalls hearing this name countless times in her childhood and reading them in the scriptures. A servant of the fallen king, the apocryphal beast, instrumental. Suddenly gazing at Arlene, Kraha asks if the fallen king has risen again. Arlene, in a hurry, dismisses the question and instructs them to quickly take up positions in the cathedral. He emphasizes that if they don't act, the town will be left as nothing but burned earth. Holland advises Kraha to go with Arlene, promising to join them after finding his family. Despite losing Jir in the labyrinth, Kraha decides to help rather than just run away. She instructs Arlene to go ahead, and upon hearing a child's plea for help, she rushes towards the source. Kraha rescues the child from a wooden log, reflecting on her newfound ability to help others. She extends her hand to the little girl, who gratefully accepts. Kraha smiles, but her joy is short-lived as large spiders suddenly appear. Shocked, she wonders if they are from the labyrinth. Initially considering the option of fighting, Kraha realizes it's impossible for her. The only choice now is to run. And just in time, a group of adventurers arrive to protect her. Archers shoot arrows at the spiders, coming to Kraha's aid in the nick of time. Everyone looks surprised as they watch Kraha. Suddenly, Holland shows up and asks how everyone is doing. He says he already took Kraha to the cathedral. Out of nowhere, one of the adventurers grabs Holland and angrily asks why Kraha is still there. Holland explains that he gave her a chance to leave, but she decided to stay. To him, Kraha reminds him of how they used to be, without much power or experience, but determined to keep going. With a smile and memories in his eyes, he talks about Kraha as someone who faced rejection, but kept trying different things, showing strong persistence. He talks directly to Kraha, saying he believes she'll become a great adventurer someday. The adventurer angrily declares that Kraha shouldn't let herself become corrupted like they were, before she gets so entangled that she can't escape anymore, before she turns into a pitiful washed-up adventurer just like them. Kraha finally speaks, asserting with a strong tone that she won't run away. The adventurer appears disappointed, while Holland smirks. Kraha questions if the same doesn't apply to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fully armed and asks if they plan to fight. The adventurer responds affirmatively, stating that they have to fight because if they don't, who will? He emphasizes the importance of protecting the family that lives in the city. Holland observes everyone's high morale and reveals to Kraha that because they wanted to help the next generation, as they found their footing in times of need, they decided to name their guild Future Plan. He admits that they may have lost all their pride and tells Kraha not to die. Kraha, after bidding farewell to the little girl with a smile, sits there looking at what is happening everywhere with an expressionless face. During that time when the adventurers are making a move, Godok sits inside the dark cave alone with his magic sword in his hand, ready to take action. The adventurers keep fighting along with archers, killing monsters and trying to save the city. Kraha helps the normal people to take shelter in the cathedral, everyone fighting to save the city. Suddenly, a flash appears, and she thinks a flash bomb can slow only a monster around, but that's more than enough. The adventurers shout that the 5th Street is all clear, and inform that backup is needed in the east side. Kraha, standing there, suddenly sees the flying monster. She shouts at Holland to look out for the bird. Holland realizes the bird's feathers are as hard as steel, and suddenly, when he was going to fall from such a high place, somehow Kraha manages to catch him and save him from the damage it could have caused. Holland sits there with his hand on his head, and Kraha asks him if he's fine. Holland thanks her for saving him and tells Kraha to brace herself because they are looking death in the face. The bird looks at them with scarred eyes and big sharp teeth. Holland says it looks like they've finally got its attention and suddenly shouts Holland's name. Holland looks at them, and these are a few archmages who, using their power, tie the monster. Kraha, with happiness, says they caught it, but Holland shouts it's too early to celebrate. Holland shouts at the archers to hit the monster with arrows so that its mobility is reduced and doesn't give time to it. All the archers start shooting arrows at it, and the bird totally covers itself without any movement. Kraha notices the strategy on the flying bird is attacks from all sides aimed at the wing. Holland runs near the bird to shoot his arrow, thinking no matter how sturdy those feathers are, if it takes an arrow at point-blank range, it will end. But suddenly, Kraha notices the fire starting to glow inside the monster's mouth as her eyes remain wide open. She realizes it's not right, and the instrumentals are dragons who can breathe fire. She shouts, telling Holland that it's going to breathe fire. Immediately, Kraha runs to save Holland, coming in front of him to shield him from the fire. She shouts at Holland to move as she gets herself burned in the process. She recalls the time when Jir told her about the cards, emphasizing that no matter how useless she thinks her cards are, there's always a situation when she can use them in a team battle. Covered in flames, she screams as the fire burns her repeatedly, reflecting on the childhood dreams she had while reading about such adventures. Holland, with his mighty bow, faces the monster breathing fire. He employs his skill, the king of the wind, and destroys the monster completely. He looks at Kraha, asking if she is still alive. With a low voice, Kraha answers him, saying yes. She lies there motionless, her body burned. Holland smiles at her and asks her not to move. The adventurer tells him that he will get a healing mage from the cathedral to come and heal them. Holland looks at Kraha with a proud face and tells her she is doing a great job. Without her, he would not have killed the beast. Kraha giggles in pain as Holland says they will take care of the rest and asks her to just rest there. Kraha closes her eyes, her shaky voice showing gratitude to Holland. However, Holland suddenly sees many bats coming towards them, leaving him in shock. The archmage there also looks at the sky, remaining in complete disbelief. Unable to trust their eyes, he shouts that they could barely handle those and tells Holland to name himself. He instructs him to evacuate everyone in the cathedral, as he will buy some time. Holland looks at him in shock, and another man speaks up, suggesting they forget about the city and stating that the whole country is screwed. He shouts at Holland to leave immediately. Kraha, with her shaking voice, asks Holland to go, and he cries due to the dire situation. With no choice left, he runs to evacuate everyone in the cathedral. The adventurer shouts, urging anyone with strength left to draw attention, even if just for a few seconds. Suddenly, Holland's eyes widen as he sees another creature, stronger and larger than before, coming towards them. In his mind, he thinks the last one was nothing compared to this one. He looks at the beast shooting a mega fireball towards them, realizing he may not make it in time. Kraha, with her half-opened eyes, looks at the monster with defeat in her eyes. However, suddenly a miracle happens, and everyone watches as a boy fights the monster with a sword, ultimately killing the beast with a single strike. Kraha, with her half-opened eyes just before fainting, looks at the boy killing the monster and then walking. She notices its cheer and loses consciousness. On the other hand, Eunice claps with a smile, saying it seems like they just made it in time. He mentions the total solar eclipse slated for dawn, and lifts his hand towards the stars. Eunice questions how about showing everyone his true power, earned through many trials and tribulations as the Archmage of the Stars. He uses his skill, causing a rain of meteors on the monsters. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lily raises her hand, informing Arlene that she is back. Arlene runs towards her, realizing it's the Saint. Lily apologizes for being late, and Arlene asks where in the world she was. Lily urges Arlene to leave the discussion and lecture for later, heading to the back room. Lily informs Arlene about the current state of the city, revealing many casualties and extensive damage. She mentions that 3 routes leading to the cathedral have been secured, but due to the large outbreak of beast birds, she leaves everything to Arlene, admitting she's not good at that stuff. Lily looks upward, expressing her intent to fix the situation. Inside the cathedral, she stands among the families, reassuring them not to worry. Lily uses her magic and suddenly, the cathedral starts glowing as she sits on her knees, praying to use her magic. She declares that the number of people injured will now be reduced to 0. A big flash occurs, healing all the people in the city. Kraha wakes up, finding herself totally fine with her injuries vanished. Similarly, Holland and all the other adventurers also realize they are healed. Holland and Kraha look at Jir as he apologizes, and, with a smile, mentions that he got lost. Jir reflects on the challenge of checking every passage without a wink of sleep or even a break, hunting down every monster in sight for 3 days continuously. He takes a deep breath and then shouts, asking Kraha where she is. Kraha, looking disappointed, gazes at him from behind and informs him that she is here. Jir approaches her, attempting to recognize her face, while Kraha wonders if something is wrong. Jir, seeing Holland, recalls the face and asks Kraha what's happening. In a whisper, Eunice had informed him that she is the only one on their side. Kraha explains that the entire city evacuated to the cathedral. When the beasts attacked, they secured escape routes and aided those who couldn't get away in time. However, apocryphal beasts appeared, and without Jir's timely arrival, they would have been in great peril. Jir inquires about her knowledge and whether they found the leader. Kraha, still in shock about the leader, says she doesn't know anything. Jir then asks Kraha to lead him to the cathedral, and she confirms. Meanwhile, Holland, standing behind them, asks what he should do. Jir, feeling anger, remains silent. Holland offers help, but Kraha reassures Jir that none of them will run away. Jir tells Holland he doesn't need help and instructs him to prioritize assisting people, counting on him. Holland acknowledges and goes to help people, while Kraha points out the cathedral. Struggling to see clearly due to his weak eyesight, Jir is handed his glasses by Kraha, who reveals she's kept them safe. Jir, lifting the glasses with happiness, shouts that he can see and points out various things. He gives Kraha his jacket, thinking she might be cold. Excitedly, he runs towards the cathedral, but Kraha corrects his direction. Lily descends from the cathedral stairs, noticing Jir's changed face. Jir proudly attributes it to wearing glasses, and Lily comments on how good they look on him. She shares the good news that Eunice and she have exhausted themselves in sealing spells, leaving them with little mana. Jir questions how that is good news, just as footsteps approach them. Lily reveals that it means Jir gets to face the leader one-on-one. Kraha wonders if that's the leader Jir mentioned, the one with apocryphal magic gear. Jir confirms, and Lily explains that Godok's sword is the Fallen King's armament, dominating his heart and mind with deep hatred, all for the revival of the Fallen King. Jir shouts at Godok and tells him that the Abyss has been resealed by a saint and an archmage. Even if he destroys the cathedral, the Fallen King won't be revived. Godok shouts in a shaking voice, telling them to run away as they can't beat Vanish. Jir wonders if he is still conscious, thinking that's an S-rank adventurer for sure. Godok further says in a shaky voice that a human being can't hope to defeat the magic sword. Jir unleashes his sword, asking if that was not the reason Godok called him. Jir says Godok knew he could not win on his own, and he knew the Fallen King would be revived if he didn't do something. Armed with what little willpower and reason he had left, he sent Jir to the labyrinth to reseal. Godok continues, saying it's impossible even for Jir. However, Jir, swinging his swords with a smile, says he is still inexperienced, but will prove with the sword that the path he chose was the best one. He declares that the swordsman Jir is back. Jir advances to deliver a strike, understanding that 50% of the time, the outcome of a fight hinges on the first blow. He targets Godok, who has transformed into a beast, but Godok skillfully blocks the attack, leaving Jir slightly shocked. Seizing the opportunity, Godok lifts Jir and pushes him away. Despite being thrown, Jir defends himself successfully and prepares for another strike. He immediately jumps to strike Jir, believing the second way is to kill him in one blow. Utilizing his 8th sword skill, he unleashes a cleaving thunderbolt, causing a massive strike. However, after the attack, he witnesses that it was not enough to kill Godok. Godok releases the magic sword, and somehow Jir manages to defend against it. The entire ground breaks into pieces, and Jir, holding his sword from the floor, reflects that the only reason he survived was because Godok had been suppressing this power. He realizes that all of this was caused by the magic sword. Examining the monster's form Godok has transformed into, Jir thinks to himself that everything had started with the sword, which invaded the warrior's soul and eliminated obstacles in its path. Suddenly, Godok jumps onto Jir to attack, but with quick reflexes, Jir manages to defend against the assault. Godok takes another strike at Jir, smashing the floor, and Jir successfully defends it with a sword. Jir says to himself that once again he feels the rage, madness, and an impulse unlike anything he has experienced before. He gazes at Godok, who in his thoughts acknowledges for the first time since the magic sword vanished that he harbors fear for a lone swordsman. Jir also senses an old sensation, realizing that unlike both experiences and the awakening, this feeling is comprehension. With determination, he rushes towards Godok to deliver a strike, feeling his soul moving faster and his body's consciousness greatly heightened. Jumping and charging at Godok, Jir believes this is how a sword should truly be wielded. As he approaches Godok, the latter attacks with his magic sword, but Jir's flash speed enables him to see and successfully defend against it. Godok seizes Jir, but Jir takes advantage of the situation, acknowledging that he could not have reached this level on his own. He reflects that missing any person or giving up on any one thing would have prevented him from exceeding his limits. Freed from Godok's grasp, Jir cuts the beast's hand, expressing gratitude in his mind for everyone's support. He unleashes his sword from his back to attack Godok, using his secret sword art, the Moon Dream. In a single strike, he slices through Godok's body, achieving victory and saving the whole country from the Fallen King.
After defeating Godok, Jir finally emerged from the dungeon and saw his friends waiting for him. He wondered if they had been worried about him. Together, they all went to Lily's home, and as soon as he lay down, exhaustion took over and he fell into a deep sleep. Several days later, Lily appeared and tried to wake Jir up by loudly clanging pots together. He slowly opened his eyes, still half asleep, but gradually came to his senses. Once fully awake, he got up to freshen up and get ready. After a while, Lily entered his room and told him she thought it would be best to wake him up early since he was leaving that day. Jir smiled and thanked her. As he reached out for a handshake, she suddenly rushed off to prepare breakfast. He let out a deep sigh, thinking how nice it was to see Lily wearing an apron. In his mind, he tried to push the thought away because of the tense atmosphere, but he couldn't help but feel frustrated at whoever had once said she was an 80-year-old married woman. It was his own thoughts. He would definitely set them straight. Once again, it was his own thoughts. Suddenly, Jir saw Eunice in front of him. He greeted him happily, saying it had been a while since they had seen each other in the morning. They chatted for a bit and then went on to a restaurant for breakfast. When they arrived, Lily waved at them, letting them know the food was ready. After calling them over, she immediately started eating without waiting for them. Seeing this, Jir and Eunice laughed and walked towards the table. While they were eating, Lily mentioned to Eunice that this would be their last meal together since Jir was leaving. Eunice nodded in confirmation. Then Lily suddenly remembered that Arlie had offered Jir a wagon, but Jir refused, saying that he didn't need it. Eunice asked if Jir was planning to leave right after breakfast. Jir confirmed and added that he would stop by the hospital for a little while, wondering if the patients had regained consciousness. Enjoying her food, Lily assured him that they had. Jir smiled, took a sip of his tea, and said he would quickly say goodbye to them since he had a promise he had been delaying for too long. Lily then reminded both of them to write letters after they went their separate ways as they had promised before. She asked them to send her a letter once they settled down. Laughing, Lily teased that her handwriting was super cute. Eunice, excited, said he would come up with a secret code for his letters, while Jir, with a straight face, admitted that his letters wouldn't be very exciting. Eunice, however, told him to make them interesting because he would be looking forward to them. After finishing breakfast, Jir stood up, said his goodbyes, and was about to leave when Lily suddenly asked, "How about a goodbye kiss?" This left him completely confused. Then, to his surprise, they pulled out their puppets and made them give him playful kisses on the cheek, disappointing him. Lily then asked if he wanted to join in. Without much enthusiasm, Jir had also used the puppet to give them playful kisses, only to realize it was more fun than he expected. Finally, they held each other's hands and promised to meet again someday. After leaving the restaurant, Jir headed to the hospital. He asked the nurse for the room number and then made his way there. When he knocked on the door, he saw Godak resting in bed, with his friends gathered around him. Before anyone could speak, Jir told them not to apologize. When Godak tried to get out of bed, Jir quickly told him not to push himself too hard. He had heard that Godak's muscles and bones were still damaged from the effects of the apocryphal magic gear, so he should focus on resting. With a disappointed look, Godak apologized, saying he had hoped to recover in time to see Jir off. But since Jir was here, it must mean that he had already decided to leave. Jir confirmed it, saying he had come for one last visit. Clenching his blanket, Godak admitted that no amount of thanks or apologies would be enough. With his own hands, he had lured Jir into a trap, stabbed him in the back, and left him for dead in the labyrinth. Yet despite all that, Jir and his comrades had still managed to overcome everything and resolve the situation. Godak went on, saying they had saved the world, and there's no way someone like him could ever truly express his gratitude or regret. But gathering his courage, he added that if there was any way Jir wanted him to repay him, he would do it, even if it cost him his life. Jir, however, refused. He said he didn't care about any of that. He admitted that when Godak nearly killed him, he had thought about taking revenge and beating him to a pulp, but in the end, he had no choice but to move forward. Godak sighed sadly and agreed, saying that if he had made even one wrong move, things could have turned out very differently. In the days that followed the incident, some members of Godak's party, including a few who were present there, came to visit him. They apologized repeatedly for their actions, saying they felt ashamed of their cowardice and the crimes they had committed. They believed they could no longer call themselves adventurers. However, Jir told them he didn't care about any of that. He reminded them that he hadn't dragged anyone into this situation. Godak was shocked to hear this, realizing just how calm Jir was. Jir explained that he was relying on everyone, and each person did what they were capable of. The twists and turns, strengths and weaknesses had led them to where they were now. It was up to each of them to decide how they felt about it. He smiled and said that, despite everything, he thought it was a good thing they took that confusing path. Hearing that, Godak felt guilty, unable to believe how kind Jir was. Jir then thanked him for everything, saying that he had the chance to help save the world because of their efforts. After that, he said his goodbyes and left the hospital. When Jir finally reached his village, he was surprised to hear people calling him a hero. Confused about what was going on, he looked around. He greeted a woman named Arlenade, who served under Lily. She told him that since he had taken such good care of their saint, they felt it was only right to address him with a formal title as a sign of gratitude. Jir thought she seemed like a kind person, Arlenate then asked if there was anything she could help him with. He asked if she knew where Kraha was. Hearing this, she immediately shouted, asking if anyone knew where Kraha was, since Sir Jir had business with her. A woman nearby replied that Kraha would be back soon. With a satisfied nod, Arlenate excitedly told Jir that she had done her part and would now return to her work. Jir sat there awkwardly, feeling embarrassed by all the attention. Just then, he noticed Holland. They locked eyes. Jir was surprised to see him in different clothes. Holland, noticing Jir's expression, confirmed that he was heading out. Then he asked if Jir had visited Godak yet. Jir nodded, saying that he had seen him earlier and that Godak had kept saying that he could never thank him enough. Jir added with a sigh that he had already heard that at least 100 times. Changing the subject, he asked Holland about his exploration. Holland smiled and said it was going well. Since the Fallen King had been resealed, the mana that had been leaking out was starting to fade. This made progress much easier. However, he admitted that the interior was still extremely complex, so they couldn't just rush through the deeper floors. Jir advised him to be extra careful when going through the door he had previously reported, as there might still be one weak enemy left behind. Holland smiled and assured him that he would be cautious, as he was joining the first survey team. Jir nodded with a grin, agreeing that it was always better to have a strong group when dealing with apocryphal beasts. They continued talking for a while until Kraha found out that Jir was there. As soon as she heard, she ran to meet him. He noticed that she looked nervous and asked her about it. She admitted that this was the first time she was seeing him since he had become a great hero, but he reminded her of the promise he had made to her, asking if she had forgotten. Kraha was shocked that he still remembered. However, she hesitated and said she didn't feel like she deserved it. With a sad expression, she explained that she hadn't done anything on her own. If it weren't for Holland, his crew, Arlenate, and everyone else, she wouldn't have been able to accomplish anything. He told her that the same could be said for him. Someone had to give him a good push forward too. He added that he had only done what was within his ability. Hearing his words, Kraha suddenly started crying. Jir gave her a warm smile and told her that from now on, he would continue doing what he could. During the battles to subjugate and investigate the apocryphal gear and the beast that had escaped the seal, as well as the difficult times that might come, he would rely on the warriors who could survive alongside him. So, as he said, it was fine to reach out for help when needed. Then he held out his hand and asked if she would help him. He admitted with a small smile that he had a terrible sense of direction and wouldn't be able to make much progress on his own. Kraha looked at him with tears streaming down her face. She had always dreamed of becoming an adventurer. Jir then made her an offer. If she helped him on his journey, he would teach her the sword in exchange. She stared at his hand, remembering how when she was younger, she always doubted whether she was worthy of such an opportunity. But now, she made her decision. She took his hand, smiling as she tried to stop her tears. Then, with determination in her voice, she said she would love to help, vowing to never give up. 3 years ago, Jir met a girl who noticed that he had not eaten anything except dirt for 3 days. At the time, he was holding a sword, and she thought it might be dangerous for someone like him to be wandering around town while barely able to stand. Thinking it would be better to take him in, she told him not to cause any trouble. Hearing her kind words, Jir felt tears welling up in his eyes, touched by her generosity. He asked for food, and she invited him inside. Grateful, he thanked her and introduced himself as Jir, the Dragon Slayer. Trying to impress her, he exaggerated his skills, boasting that if she ever needed his help, she only had to ask. In the present time, Jir was sitting in a carriage, writing a letter to his friends, Lily and Eunice. He told them that he was now in the eastern country and had come to see an optician, but unfortunately, the optician had gone out of business permanently. He then asked how they were doing and if they had taken on any students. Next, he wrote a personal reply to Lily, explaining that the way he spoke and the way he wrote were just different. In his reply to Eunice, he admitted that the secret code in Eunice's letter was too difficult for him. Even after a whole week, he still hadn't figured it out. After finishing his letters, he took a moment to read the ones that he had received from them. As he read, a smile appeared on his face, and he gently closed the letters, feeling happy. However, after that, their carriage came to a stop. Kraha informed Jir that there was a monster up ahead, so the road had been temporarily closed. Jir asked if they would still be able to walk the rest of the day. Kraha nodded and explained that, according to the map, there was a path they could follow on foot. Jir smiled, realizing that it had already been 2 weeks since they left the city. The journey had been going smoothly, unlike his past travels, where he constantly found himself lost. Whenever he traveled alone, he would unknowingly end up in unfamiliar places. To figure out his location, he often had to climb high places, follow rivers that led to the ocean, or even find himself buried on the ground. But now, he no longer had to deal with those struggles. As he enjoyed walking without worrying about getting lost, Kraha suddenly stopped him and pointed out that he was heading in the wrong direction. Jir then noticed that the flowers hadn't bloomed that year. When he mentioned it, Kraha also realized it and said that she thought various types should have been blooming by now. Curious, he asked how much she knew about plants. She replied that she had only learned a few things from a field guide. Jir looked at her, thinking that she was impressive and never once a burden. She then asked him if the hilt of a sword should rest against her wrist in a certain way. He told her that it depended on the situation. He started explaining the theory behind it in great detail, leaving her confused. After finishing his explanation, he remembered how his master used to call him a pain in the ass. Now here he was, teaching swordsmanship himself. After taking notes on key points, Kraha thanked him for the lesson. Jir thought to himself that everything, the journey, the training, was going smoothly, which made him feel strangely anxious. Suddenly, she noticed that his shoe strap was loose, so she stepped in to do it for him. He told her that he could handle it himself, but she did anyway. This made him wonder if their relationship was truly balanced. She had been taking care of all the trip preparations, and her support had been constant. He worried that he might have become too dependent on her, and thought that their relationship should be more equal. Wanting to do something for her, he suddenly picked up a mushroom and showed it to her. She glanced at the mushroom and informed Jir that it was poisonous, explaining that it could cause mouth ulcers and a fever, though it was surprisingly tasty. Upon hearing this, Jir immediately discarded the mushroom, his expression filled with disappointment. Amused by his reaction, Kraha smirked and remarked that she would stop sharing random food facts with him. Suddenly, they noticed a strange pattern on the soil, which left both of them shocked. Jir turned to Kraha and asked what she thought about it. She touched the soil and observed that it looked like some kind of monster had slithered through the area. Jir mentioned that there were usually very few monsters in that region, especially because of the surrounding mountains, so he wanted to take care of them before anyone got hurt. Kraha then asked if there was a dojo in the town they were heading to. Jir confirmed this, explaining that he had been there 3 years ago. For various reasons, he had been attacked at the time, and the dojo had taken care of him for half a year afterward. He added that, coincidentally, his sword style and the dojo's were almost the same. Kraha then asked if the dojo's owner was named Saminato, and if the assistant instructor was Chikano. She recalled that Jir's new journey was to investigate the remnants of the fallen king and find strong allies. Curious, she asked if the two were strong. Jir agreed, saying that if they had been invited to Future Plan instead of him, they would have still been able to stop the resurrection of the fallen king. As they followed the trail, they noticed it ended near some bushes. Curious, they made their way toward the bushes in the forest. Kraha turned to Jir and asked what he thought about it. He guessed it might be a trap. Hearing that, she asked if he would let her handle it. Jir gave her a suspicious look, but eventually agreed, saying he would back her up from behind. She drew her sword, preparing herself for any hidden danger. As she moved forward, she sensed bloodlust nearby and got ready to strike first. However, just as she was about to attack, a large monster suddenly lunged at her from behind. Thanks to her quick reflexes, she managed to dodge the attack in time. She knew her magic wasn't strong enough to kill the monster outright, but it was enough to create an opening. Using that opportunity, she prepared to counterattack. However, the monster let out a powerful roar and struck her, sending her flying. Seeing this, Jir immediately jumped into action, drawing his sword and rushing in to save her from the beast. Just as Jir was about to strike, an arrow suddenly flew through the air. Thanks to his quick reflexes, he managed to dodge it. The arrow, however, hit the monster instead, killing it instantly. Jir was surprised and wondered if the arrow had been meant for him. Kraha, equally puzzled, questioned what had just happened. But then Jir suddenly realized the arrow had come from the very person they had been talking about earlier, the one who had taken care of him. However, they were still several kilometers away from town, so he couldn't understand where the arrow had been shot from. Before he could think further, Kraha pointed out that the monster's body was still twitching. Just then, a boy named Ika appeared at incredible speed and swiftly finished off the creature. Jir, sitting back with a smile, commented that Ika had gotten stronger. He smirked and replied that he knew someone as badass as him would like that. They finally arrived in town and met Saminato, the person who had taken care of Jir in the past. Saminato pointed out how Jir had gone from being a dragon slayer to the sealer of the fallen king, yet he remained as modest as ever. Embarrassed, Jir blushed and joked that he must have inherited such good traits from Saminato. Saminato then asked if Jir had come to seek help against those connected to the fallen king. Meanwhile, Kraha observed him closely, realizing that he was not only a former peer of Jir's mentor, but also the person who had shaped Jir's idea of strength. Although Saminato agreed to help, he mentioned that this wasn't the best time. Jir guessed it was because of the mountain monsters, and Saminato confirmed it. He explained that their town wasn't the only one struggling. There had been reports of monster activity in 3 different locations across the country. He wasn't sure if it was connected to the fallen king, but for now, their priority was keeping the town safe. Jir nodded in understanding, saying that he had only come to give them an early warning. For official cooperation, he explained that the church or the Magic Federation government would contact them. Saminato smiled, thanked him for his understanding, and then teased Jir, saying that whenever he got nervous, he sounded like an old man. Jir was left speechless at the comment. Saminato then told him to make himself at home before turning to Kraha and asking if she was Jir's student. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled and introduced herself as Kraha, explaining that Jir had been teaching her swordsmanship for the past few weeks. Suddenly, Jir heard something and realized it was already time for the shift change. Returning his attention to Kraha, he mentioned that since they had only recently become master and student, they were bound to have many concerns. He reassured them that if they ever needed anything, they could ask him. Jir thanked him and Saminato left. Kraha then commented that Saminato seemed incredibly strong. She pointed out that she could tell from his eyes and the way he carried himself. Jir laughed and agreed, adding that this was where his sword style and the dojo style started to differ. He then asked for her thoughts on the increased monster activity in the region and whether she thought it was connected to the fallen king. After thinking for a moment, she replied that monster activity itself was a common disaster that happened from time to time. However, the fact that this particular monster was smart enough to hide its presence made her feel like it was too strong to be just another creature that had wandered out of the labyrinth. Still, she admitted that maybe she felt that way because she was just too weak. Jir agreed with her and suggested they look into it later. For now, he said, they should just head to their rooms. Kraha excitedly agreed, but just as she was about to stand up, she suddenly got a cramp in her leg. Jir quickly held her leg and told her not to worry. He would take care of it. As he was tending to her leg, Ika suddenly appeared and teasingly asked if he was interrupting something. Jir quickly denied it, but he just grinned and walked away, leaving them in an awkward silence. They followed him, and Ika asked if they were traveling together. Jir confirmed it, and he laughed, saying that meant he wouldn't have to worry about getting lost anymore. Jir, equally excited, agreed. Then Ika turned to Kraha and told her that if she had any questions, she could ask him since he had been living there for a long time. She politely bowed and thanked him, which left him shocked. He hadn't expected Jir's student to be so well-mannered. Noticing Ika's reaction, Jir felt annoyed and wondered what kind of impression he had of him. Just then, a girl passed by, leaving all of them stunned. They quickly realized it was Chikano. She stopped, looked at them, and just as shocked, called Jir a small fry. Meeting his gaze, she sarcastically asked if he wanted to thank her for saving him in the forest. Ika turned to Kraha and said, "Let's not get involved with these weirdos," before walking away. Kraha followed him, confused. As they walked, he explained that Jir and Chikano first met after Jir killed the dragon. Originally, the mission was supposed to be handled by Saminato and Chikano, but they were misled by a false report and ended up in the complete opposite direction of the dragon's location. Meanwhile, Instructor Valfield and Jir happened to stumble upon the dragon and took care of it instead. He added that Chikano wasn't happy about it at all. She immediately attacked Jir to test whether he had really killed the dragon, and the two ended up fighting for 3 days and nights. Eventually, Chikano collapsed from exhaustion, and just as Jir rushed toward her to finish the fight, he suddenly started foaming at the mouth and passed out as well. But somehow, before anyone realized it, they became good friends. Another reason why he called them weirdos. When they arrived at Kraha's room, Ika smiled and asked if, as Jir's student, she must be strong. However, she sighed and admitted that she actually was very weak. He laughed and said Jir always claimed to be inexperienced too, yet look at how strong he had become. He then told her to call him any time if she ever wanted to play games and when she was free before leaving. Kraha stood there, feeling a bit down, thinking that she really needed to work much harder. Meanwhile, Eunice was reading the letters he had received from Lily and Jir. He was surprised to learn that Jir had other friends besides him, especially since he had even sent Jir a book. In her letter, Lily mentioned that she was currently stuck at the church headquarters, joking that she was basically acting as a paperweight. She also told Eunice that they needed to do their best regarding the rejuvenation of monsters, as it seemed to be affecting more than the apocryphal beasts. She warned them not to let their guard down, and even included a drawing of a raccoon dog, which she thought Jir might be struggling with. Jir was sitting inside the training room, smiling as he read the letters while Kraha trained nearby. As he wrote his replies, he expressed his shock that they thought he didn't have any other friends. He also personally thanked Eunice for the book titled, "Why Can't You Make Friends? 7 Causes of Loneliness," saying that he read it right away and found it very informative. Suddenly, Chikano appeared and glanced at the book Jir was reading, curious about why he was reading in the first place. However, when she noticed the title, she hesitated before asking if he wanted to talk about it. Jir reassured her that it wasn't a big deal and explained that he had received the book from a friend. She looked puzzled and questioned if the person who gave him the book about making friends was really his friend. Jir simply nodded, confirming that they were. As they turned their attention to Kraha, who was training hard, Chikano commented that she seemed to be doing well. However, she asked Jir if, since Kraha had been a part of an S-rank party before, wouldn't it be better to move her to the next level? Jir sighed and admitted that he wished he had understood her better before taking her under his wing. Chikano rolled her eyes and called him annoying, saying she didn't have time to get involved in such troublesome things. She then mentioned that she wouldn't be around for the rest of the day since she had guard duty from morning to night and started walking away. Jir offered to take over for her, but she shook her head and thanked him for the offer. However, she explained that only she and her father stood guard at the watchtower because they were the only ones with a range to attack beyond the town limits. She also mentioned that since it was raining today, visibility would already be limited. With that, she left. Jir spent some time teaching Kraha a few sword techniques and observed as she practiced. While watching her, he suddenly heard someone shouting his name. Before he could react, Ika charged at him, attempting to land a kick. However, Jir effortlessly blocked the attack, leaving Ika frustrated. Ika angrily complained that Jir was the only one staying inside that day. In response, Jir simply smiled and pointed out that it was because of the rain. Ika, still irritated, glared at him. But Jir explained that Ika's special technique had the potential to electrocute everyone around him, making it unsafe for him to patrol in a group. Despite the explanation, Ika argued that Instructor Saminato and Chikano would have been fine. Jir laughed and reminded him that they were far from ordinary people. He then mentioned an old saying about the right person being assigned to the right job and asked Ika how he would feel if Jir suddenly announced that he would patrol alone. Hearing this, Ika's frustration turned into resignation as he admitted that it would be a complete disaster. Jir agreed, and Ika, now somewhat amused, remarked on Jir's uncanny ability to persuade people. With that, the two of them sat together, silently watching Kraha as she continued her training. Jir was beginning to feel bored sitting there, so he asked Ika why he had even come in the first place. Ika replied that he wanted to spar with Kraha, but she wasn't strong enough to make it interesting. Jir acknowledged that Ika had improved, though he admitted there was still a significant gap in strength between him and Kraha. He complimented Ika's progress, which made him feel a little happier. Jir then reassured him that Kraha would be fine. He explained that she was working hard to identify her strengths and weaknesses, gradually connecting everything she had learned. Given time, she would undoubtedly grow stronger. He then asked Ika if he wasn't doing a good job as her teacher. However, instead of answering, Ika shouted that he didn't care and started crying, complaining that he wished he could have gone on patrol instead. Meanwhile, in town, the guards gathered to report the shift change and exchange information. Just as they were about to take a break, a small rat suddenly appeared in front of them. They hesitated, unsure whether it was just an ordinary rodent or a magic beast, not wanting to lower their guard. A moment later, they stood frozen in shock over what they just witnessed. At the same time, an evaluation alarm rang loudly, startling Jir, Kraha, and Ika. Jir turned to Ika and asked what the alarm meant. Ika quickly explained that it signaled a magic beast emergency. Without wasting any time, he led them out of the training area, expecting to meet up with the remaining town defenders. However, due to his shock, no one else was there. Panic crept into his voice as he wondered what he should do now that he was seemingly alone. Kraha examined the ground and asked if this place was designated as an evacuation site. Ika confirmed it, and Jir immediately turned to Kraha, asking if she remembered the layout of the town. She replied that she had a rough idea from when they first arrived, including the escape routes. Hearing this, Jir quickly leaped onto the roof and instructed her to guide him from there. Before Kraha could respond, a loud shout came from the watchtower. It was Chicano, calling out to Jir and advising him to head north while she took south. Jir hesitated for a moment, wondering if by north she meant upward. Annoyed by his confusion, Chicano fired an arrow in the intended direction, making it clear. Without hesitation, Jir followed the path indicated by the arrow, calling out to Kraha and Ika to hold down the fort in his absence. Jir followed the direction of the arrow while Ika stood there, confused and unsure of what to do next. Seeing this, Kraha dashed off, saying she would go and mark the evacuation routes. Ika, concerned about her safety, decided to follow her, saying it was too dangerous for her to go alone in this situation. Kraha used her abilities to start marking the routes, but as she worked, she wondered what she should do next. She decided to head to the center of the town, since she knew the monsters were coming from the north and south. She thought it would be better to focus on the center for now. She told Ika that if they could block those paths and indicate some detour routes, it should be enough for the time being. Ika just followed her, but suddenly, he noticed a monster heading toward Kraha. Without hesitation, he dashed forward and quickly killed it. Kraha was shocked, realizing how close she had been to being attacked. Ika casually said he would stay with her because he didn't have anything else to do. As they continued, Kraha noticed that they had already covered a significant distance. She realized the monsters were invading much faster than she had anticipated. Meanwhile, at the North Gate, the adventurers were facing a large number of monsters. Although the monsters were small, they had the advantage of sheer numbers. The adventurers began fighting them, hoping for reinforcements. Suddenly, Jir appeared, using his Thunderbolt ability to kill many of the monsters at once. The adventurers were relieved to see him and cheered. Jir told them that he would take care of everything outside the barrier and then reinforce it again. However, as he was about to move, a monster slipped past him. He couldn't believe it, but one of the adventurers quickly handed him a replacement sword. With the new weapon, Jir started striking down the monsters one by one. As he fought, he noticed a magic stone among the monsters and realized they were apocryphal beasts. He quickly instructed the adventurers to hurry up and close the barrier. Looking around, Jir observed that all the monsters were mid-level beasts, which struck him as odd. Even lesser beasts would normally be strong enough to destroy the town, so the presence of these mid-level beasts left him with a sense of unease. On the other hand, Ika and Kraha were also fighting off monsters inside the town. Ika admitted that her decision to head to the center was right, but he couldn't help but wonder how many monsters they were actually up against. Kraha, however, was certain that the real threat wasn't their individual strength, but the sheer number of monsters they were facing. One of the adventurers mentioned that they needed to break the deadlock at last, but she suddenly came up with a plan. She began explaining her idea to them, and while the adventurers were confused about the plan, he acknowledged that it might work, in theory. However, he pointed out that the timing would be tricky. She then revealed that she could use her communication spell and the range wouldn't be an issue. Both of them were shocked to hear this, but they quickly approved the plan. She then used her spell to relay the message, telling everyone that the dojo unit had agreed and they were now ready to execute the plan. She then stood on the watchtower, guiding everyone with her communication spell. As she surveyed the situation, she knew her role was to lead them to safety, but she also wondered what the best move would be in this chaotic moment. She scanned her surroundings, trying to analyze when the perfect opportunity to act would come. As soon as she saw it, she shouted and signaled everyone. The adventurers quickly created an opening for Ika, and with one powerful strike on the ground, Ika unleashed a massive thunderbolt. The lightning surged in all directions, instantly killing the monsters around them. However, the force of the strike left Ika drained and unable to move. He collapsed to the ground, coughing, surrounded by smoke. Despite his exhaustion, the adventurers cheered and celebrated Ika's success, praising him for his incredible feat. Ika, still sitting there in a daze, could hardly believe it worked. He was overwhelmed by the cheers, but was also unsure of what had just happened. Suddenly, he noticed something. A figure was walking nearby, and when their eyes met, Ika was stunned. He couldn't help but wonder if what was in front of him was truly a demon. As Ika stared at the demon, memories of his training surfaced in his mind. He recalled learning about the creatures they must never fight. The first creature was a dragon, a beast so powerful that only Jir and his master had ever managed to slay one. The second was a calamity spoken of only in legends, a creature that resembled a man but was not one. It was a demon. Seeing the demon standing before him, Ika was frozen in shock, unable to believe his eyes. From the watchtower, Kraha also stared in disbelief. The presence of a demon was something none of them had expected. Sensing the danger, an archer quickly released an arrow to distract the demon and draw its attention away from Ika. However, as the arrow neared the demon, it simply looked at it, and with a mere glance, the arrow shattered to pieces. In the next moment, the demon unleashed its power, destroying the entire watchtower in an instant. Despite the sudden attack, Kraha and the others managed to land safely on the ground, avoiding serious injury. Ika sat frozen, staring at the demon, realizing that it was on a completely different level from anything he had ever faced. A deep sense of dread washed over him as he understood the horrifying truth. If they fought this creature, everyone would die. His mind flashed back to his childhood, memories of his training and fears resurfacing. But instead of giving in, he tightened his grip on his sword, determined to stop it. With a burst of resolve, Ika leaped into the air, aiming to strike the demon. However, before he could land a hit, the demon effortlessly swiped its tail, sending him crashing to the ground. As he struggled to recover, Kraha quickly stepped in front of him, standing her ground. She turned to him and urged him to get Jir while she held the demon off. Before she could respond, the demon moved with incredible speed, grabbing Kraha in its hand. Its piercing gaze bore into her, leaving her completely paralyzed with fear. Just as it seemed like all hope was lost, a sudden strike interrupted the demon's hold. Samanado had appeared, his blade slashing at the creature, forcing it to release Kraha. Still shaken, Kraha stood there in shock, struggling to process what was happening. Creatures like this only existed in fairy tales, so why was one standing before them now? Meanwhile, Samanado stepped forward without hesitation, facing the demon with unwavering determination. His eyes burned with resolve as he pointed his weapon at the monstrous being, making it clear that if the demon was looking for a fight, he would be the one to face it. Meanwhile, at the North Gate, Jir was still battling the creatures when he received news that a powerful demon had appeared in the center of the town, and that Master Samanado was fighting it. In the town center, Samanado struck the demon repeatedly, managing to injure it. However, due to its incredible regeneration, the wounds healed instantly, leaving the demon as strong as before. The battle between the two continued, with both exchanging fierce attacks. Kraha, watching the fight unfold, noticed that Samanado was clearly overpowering the demon. She held Ika in her lap, checking his condition, and saw that while he had injuries, none were fatal, meaning he would recover soon. Just then, Ika opened his eyes and insisted on helping. Kraha tried to stop him, but before she could react, the demon suddenly abandoned its fight with Samanado and flew straight toward them. Kraha froze as the demon roared, realizing the danger they were in, especially since Ika was still unable to move. Just as the demon was about to strike, Samanado appeared and blocked its attack, declaring that he would unleash the full force of his second burst. However, before he could react, the demon suddenly vanished and reappeared behind him, piercing its hand through Samanado's back. Samanado was stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Kraha too was left in shock, unable to believe her eyes. One moment, the demon had been in front of them, and the next, it had teleported behind Samanado in an instant. Despite his injuries, Samanado attempted to continue fighting, refusing to give up. But before he could launch another attack, the demon struck with overwhelming power, completely destroying him. As Samanado fell, the demon let out a loud, menacing laugh, revealing its victory. Suddenly, an arrow flew toward the demon, but it swiftly leaped onto a nearby rooftop, effortlessly dodging the attack. Instead of showing concern, it burst into loud laughter. Chikano, believing that reinforcements had arrived and that Jir would be there soon, fired multiple arrows at the demon. However, despite her relentless attacks, the demon easily avoided every shot, continuing to laugh mockingly. Then, without warning, it vanished into thin air. Kraha watched as the demon disappeared and immediately decided to report to Chikano that it had escaped towards the north. Meanwhile, other people arrived and quickly carried Ika away to treat his injuries. Left sitting on the ground, Kraha felt helpless. The realization of her own weakness weighed heavily on her, filling her with disappointment. Several days later, Jir sat reading letters from Eunice and Lily. In her letter, Lily informed him about the beasts and mentioned a powerful demon known as the 13th Gate Demon who belonged to the Middle Order. She explained that there had been no previous reports of abilities like attacks passing through demons or teleportation. However, with the reappearance of the apocryphal beasts, the Holy Knights had been dispatched and the church had been overwhelmed with handling the crisis. Because of this, it had become difficult for them to send aid elsewhere. Lily then revealed that due to the situation, they had decided to grant Jir special combat authorization. She instructed him to review the attached documents for more details, explaining that he would now be treated with the same authority as a saint or an archmage. She apologized for forcing him into such a dangerous role, but assured him that they would be eternally grateful for his help. Finally, she added that if he wished to reject the authorization, he was free to do so. She ended her letter with another apology, regretting that she couldn't come to assist him personally. Jir then read Eunice's letter, in which he mentioned that he was currently stuck in the Grand Library just like them. Eunice wished them the best of luck and personally assured Jir that he would continue working hard to send reinforcements as soon as possible. After reading both letters, Jir wrote back to thank them for their support. He acknowledged that they were just as busy as he was, as they were all wanderers who now carried the responsibilities of their respective organizations. He assured them that he would stay in touch if anything urgent came up. In his reply to Lily, Jir mentioned that he had been using sanctuary charms to strengthen their defensive lines. He also informed her that while the antidote charms had not been able to completely cure Samanado, they had at least stabilized his condition for the time being. He expressed his deep gratitude to Lily for providing such valuable assistance. Finally, he also thanked Eunice for his help and apologized for being a burden to him. As Jir stood in the rain, he thought to himself that 8 days had passed since the demon's attack, and they had done everything they could. It had been raining the entire time. Just then, the shifts changed, and the other adventurers stood nearby under an umbrella. They asked Jir if he wanted to join them, but he refused, saying he would just take a shower in the rain. They then mentioned the magic stones that could be used for bathing in this world and asked if he was aware of them. Jir confirmed that he knew about them. Curious, they joked that maybe he hated bathing, like their dogs. Jir denied it, explaining that he had simply been traveling. One of them suggested that while he was in town, he should try living like a civilized person. Jir agreed, and they all continued standing under the umbrella. They only had one, so he asked how many people could fit under it. They explained that everyone had forgotten their umbrellas except for one person, and they confirmed that there was room for one more. Suddenly, Ika left and pointed to a girl standing alone in the distance with an umbrella. Jir looked over and saw that it was Kraha. Without hesitation, he walked toward her and held the umbrella for her. Then he apologized for taking hers earlier. Kraha smiled and told him it was fine since she had willingly offered it to them. Jir then asked Kraha what she would be doing today. She told him that she would be on patrol duty starting at noon. However, she was more worried about him and Chikano since they were working 12-hour shifts. Jir admitted that it was tough, but he reassured her that in any battle, such hardships were common. He and Chikano had gotten good at recovering their strength. Still, he acknowledged that things were getting harder with time and they needed to take action. He then shared something from Lily's letter. According to the Apocrypha, these creatures were described as appearing in great numbers. At first, he thought it just meant a swarm of rats. But 2 days later, tigers appeared. The next day, rabbits showed up. Then came horses. And today, there were monkeys. He explained that all of them had identical numbers and markings, as if they were the same type of beast. Meanwhile, Kraha was writing down the notes as she asked if it meant that there were many different species. She was deep in thought, and Jir explained that they couldn't keep doing what they were doing. At the same time, they couldn't launch an all-out attack without a trump card. She agreed with him. Noticing that she was deep in thought, Jir asked what was on her mind. Kraha explained that all of the species seemed to be moving in one common direction, either northeast or east-north. She wondered if it was possible that the apocryphal beasts were hiding somewhere in that area. As she muttered this to herself, Jid stood there, amazed by her insight, completely impressed by how incredible her thinking was. After a while, Jir reached the watchtower and met Chikano there. He gave her the battle report and she read through it, pointing out that it was well done. Jir mentioned that he had just copied Kraha's report. Chikano then noticed the second sheet, a chart about the current condition of the garrison, and said it was really well drawn. He agreed, saying Kraha was pretty good. Jir looked at the rice ball and said that they couldn't hold out much longer because everyone was mentally exhausted and their numbers were decreasing every day. Chikano asked if they should reduce their numbers even more, but Jir said that that would only increase their workload. Instead, he suggested that they should focus on stepping up the people who were capable of handling more. As they were discussing, Chikano realized with shock that the number of people who could work was getting smaller and smaller. Jir told her to relax and eat the rice balls. She asked if he knew those were hers, but he ignored the question and asked if it wasn't time for Ika to return to duty. She didn't respond, so Jir asked if Ika was hurt more than he thought. Chikano replied that it wasn't that. She just didn't want to let him fight. Jir told her that once she was done, he would make some adjustments to her proposal. Chikano teased him, calling him Mr. Special Combat Authority, and Jir smirked, saying that it sounded crazy strong. Chikano laughed and said that's exactly why it pissed her off a bit. He took the umbrella and started walking through the town, thinking about their current situation. He realized that if things continued like this, it would only lead them to wearing down. If he and Chikano were to fall, everything would collapse. As he pondered, he thought there was no doubt that what Kraha had said could be true. But why had such a powerful apocryphal beast appeared the night they resealed the fallen king? It was a good point, but as he was lost in thought, he suddenly realized he had lost his way. Confused, he stopped and shouted, asking Kraha where he was. Kraha, hearing the voice, looked around, puzzled, wondering where it had come from.